Welcome to episode 18 of the Coast AFL Podcast with Nick and Blaze. This week it's all about demolitions because it was pretty high scoring games across the board, but pretty massive margins also across the board with only one or two games that were somewhat close. So we're gonna pretty much talk about all of those. Maybe not spend as much time on some of them, and have a look at that player survey. That fan survey that was released a couple of weeks back. So let's jump into it. How are you doing, Mr. Cyric?
Not too bad, not too bad. Sort of bit of a busy weekend. Relocated, as you can see if you're on YouTube. Different background. House sitting again. So, also out a tiny bit on Saturday, which was good because it allowed me to skip a certain part of a game that might have been okay for me to skip.
Yeah,
apart from that, still got up on a few games. Looking after the cute little doggo. I think I got him on camera last time, but he's
possibly
sleeping at the moment. So yeah, apart from that, yeah, not too bad.
Fair enough. Sounds pretty good. Shall we get straight into it?
Yeah, let's go ahead. I think you've got the first game.
I do have the first game. Friday night blockbuster at the MCG, which wasn't really much of a blockbuster. Kind of went as most people expected. With Carlton taking on Geelong, scoreline 21-12, 138 to 11-9, 75. Carlton just solidifying second position. They're easily the second best team in the competition by far. And they look really clean coming out of a bye.
Oh, absolutely. Like, especially when you hear, a lot of, well, I think it's more fans. Team don't really talk about it, but everyone gets a bit antsy seeing their team after a bye. But yeah, Carlton just looked pretty glued together. Especially as I said, it seems like their game plan's coming together, and they flexed massively on Geelong.
Yeah, they did. Like, I don't even think Carlton are missing any major players either. Like,
well, not that they already knew they weren't. Obviously, they got Stephen Silvani.
Oh, yeah.
Stephen?
Jack Silvani.
Yeah, no, Jack Silvani. And
his father is Stephen.
Yeah, I know. And now I'm forgetting the other one, the halfback, Doherty. So,
but yeah, out.
They've got most. Jesse Motlop, I think, maybe still yet to come, or he's back in the
yeah, I think Motlop's still out. Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of core, yeah, their field's pretty set because all three lines are playing pretty well for them at the moment.
Yeah, they're really well structured. Especially their ruck situation, which is going to be the main one that I'm going to be talking about to start. Yeah, specifically Tom de Koning versus his brother Sam. An interesting matchup for sure. Like Sam himself, like I'm pretty much going to pump up Tom for the most part of this, but Sam did also have a pretty decent performance. I will mention him a little bit later on. But for Tom, he finished with 25 touches, 72% efficiency, 20 contested possessions, 7 inside 50s, 34 hitouts, 7 clearances, 10 score involvement, 6 tackles, 18 pressure acts, and a 1-1 scoreline. He was doing everything that would be asked of him as a ruck and a a mid forward as well. He was all over the shop.
Oh, it was insane. I think it's weird because I don't know if you saw some of the stats I put up or about to talk about them, but theoretically this game is the highest, according to Champion Data, rated game for a player this season, which is interesting. I wouldn't personally put it as the best, but it's definitely the best ruck performance. And yeah, as I said,
especially considering de Koning and both de Konings and the fact they're normally like the second ruck and not necessarily the first.
Yeah, exactly. Because normally you would have Pitnet if they were playing there. Well, actually, I don't even know if it's there. I think they just dropped it. I can't remember.
Either, I'll be honest.
But yeah, so Tom de Koning looks like he is very set in that pure ruck position. And yeah, as I said, Sam de Koning too. Didn't do too badly against him. And yeah, I'd just like to point out with that fact as well, talking about Champion Data, it's now the highest brotherly pair of player ratings to ever join Tom De Koning got 35.5 metric points, champion data points. Sam De Koning got 26. And yeah, it's the highest ever combination by a pair of brothers playing in the same game.
That makes sense. I mean, granted, we do have years upon years of statistics to look at. But
well,
in terms
not quite. The champion data didn't do it start until 2006, I think.
Oh yeah, that's true. So it missed like the key eras of like the Ablett brothers and some of the games of the Selwood brothers.
Yeah, the Ablett brothers didn't really have too much together. Like Nathan didn't really have that many great games. But I would have said the Scots.
Yeah, the Scots as well
would be the other one.
It would have been the major missing one because of Brisbane. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, not surprisingly, the second highest is the Dacos boys. So at about 10 points behind.
I would assume maybe the Kings are top 5.
I'll get it up actually. I'll quickly see if I can go through it.
Because the Mackays are definitely. Actually, the Mackay battle wasn't actually that bad, so it might not be that
it's a lot of midfielders. Yeah, I mean you're right with the Selwoods. I have to go back. There we go. Joel and Scott Selwood at 44.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie and Ed Curnow. We've got Charlie at 39 and Ed at 4.5. So
that's a pretty massive difference.
Yeah. The Jacks, Kieran and Brandon at 40, basically 42. Another Dacos one. Brad and Matt Crouch at 40. Another Dacos one. Sam and Ben Reid. So you had Sydney and Collingwood.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And running it off, would you believe, Blazy? It's Nick and Josh Dacos.
What a surprise.
So yeah, 4 of them are the Dacos brothers. So
well, I mean, they
at least
in terms of pure midfielders, they probably are the strongest pair.
Oh yeah, exactly.
They're like midfielder halfback, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Just something I thought was interesting that I could divert. But yeah, back to the game. I'll let you.
Back to the game.
Yeah.
We'll talk about, the De Koning brothers both had great games. Tom definitely far superior in this instance. Captain Patrick Cripps had another monster game. He collected 41 touches, 18 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s, 14 clearances, which was highest of the game. Possibly highest of the entire round. I think there's one that I'm going to talk about a bit later on that was pretty close.
Yeah.
What are I up to? I've already.
You're right. By the way, it is 14.
8 score involvements, 5 tackles, and 17 pressure acts.
Yep. It was.
Because I know Errol Golden got 12 clearances. I'm going to talk about him a bit later. And I think that was second highest.
A couple of others.
My head.
Yeah, there's a few people tied on 12.
But yeah, no, Cripps, monster game. Absolutely massive. And we might talk about him.
Dominated the tackles as well.
We might talk about him a bit later with the whole fan survey thing that I mentioned earlier. That he could, statistics wise, he could be the best well-rounded player in the competition right now. He's definitely elite. I think he's top 3 personally.
Okay.
I think. We'll get about it. We'll get onto it later, but I think my top 3 include Cripps, Heaney, and maybe Goulden. Either Goulden or Grundy. Honestly, I think Grundy's been a massive pickup for Sydney.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I said. There's a lot of players in the mix. I think Cripps is definitely up there, and especially some of the performances where he's pretty much taking the team on his back in some places.
But again, the Dogs have just been way too inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Sam Walsh. I'm kind of just pointing out the superstars in this game, but that's because the entire team was just that good. I kind of just want to talk about the superstars. Sam Walsh looks so good. 33 touches, 63.6% efficiency, 12 contested possessions, 8 inside 50s, 9 clearances, 10 score involvements, 5 tackles, 27 pressure acts, 1-1 scoreline, and 640 meters gained. There is one player, again, I'm going to talk about him in the next game that I talk about, which happens to be the Sydney game, who had a monster performance with the ball, and that is definitely going to be interesting to talk about. Anyway, Carlton Geelong. My last bit about the Blues is shout out to Charlie Curnow. Kicked 5 goals. put him further in front on the Coleman medal. I believe he's in front by... Actually, I think he's in front by 5 now, because I think he was tied start of the round.
Yeah, I think so.
I was looking at it before. Let me bring it back up.
I sort of lost track. Yeah, I don't tend to keep on tabs of it after the bye round, while bye rounds are going. So, yeah, but I think he's broken away a bit more.
Yeah, he's in front exactly by 5 on Ben King.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So there you go.
Yeah, I'd like to add I think continuing, and we've probably heard a bit about him. Alex Cincotta.
Cincotta,
especially last year. Yeah, because he wasn't tagging last year. Because people forget it's his second year. I think so. Whenever you're bold and you're like 22, I think people just assume that you're like 28 and then like your 5th year. But yeah, he's tagging the lights out of players. Took Tom Stewart. Pretty much mitigated his intercepting in the back line and kicked a couple of goals. You know, he wasn't just, because obviously when you play that forward lockdown player, sometimes you can just have like minimal forward impact. Cincotta, whenever he got the chance, took advantage of it. And, for a second-year player, absolutely fantastic role. Still got 7 tackles, so high pressure. And, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like, if you're a young player and like a massively strong team, and like Sydney are very good evidence of this. Like you've got both the Warner brothers playing through there. You've got a bunch of young forwards that are helping you kick goals. You've got a really strong, actually quite young backline, which is surprising. That's holding up really well. So it's like if you're a young player, you take the advantage and take the opportunities whilst you can. And that's exactly what both these two teams are doing.
Yeah, exactly. When you got that team support around you, as I said, players can really thrive. And, as there's a lot of the youngsters, I mean, obviously it's not just Cincotta. Both the Hollands had especially Elijah Hollands had a really good game.
Yep.
Matty Owies, I think he's still young. I think he's like 23, 24.
Yeah.
Kicked 3 goals. So, yeah. No, absolutely. When you're going well, like a lot of these players can actually provide a lot more than you'd think.
Yep, absolutely. Again, all right. Now talking about Geelong, Sam de Koning, again, he had a really, really strong performance. Yeah. Granted, not as strong as his brother, but he finished with 20 touches at 85% efficiency, 16 contested possessions, 20 hitouts, 4 clearances, 18 pressure acts, and a goal. So, still decent performance by a ruck, especially against your own brother. Max Holmes did a lot of running. Collected 24 touches, 14 contested possessions, 5 marks, 4 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 6 score involvements, 16 pressure acts, a goal, and 554 meters gained. So again, like
they sort of need him in the inside midfield now.
Yeah,
especially if Danger doesn't get off, because he has said they've just been lacking a bit in the inside, and at least Holmes has provided them a bit.
Yeah, normally he plays on the outside, but I think he's actually pretty decent for playing on ball as well.
Yeah, I think last 4 weeks he's been playing inside. It's been a switch that's gone over the last few. More of need.
Yeah, definitely more of need. They don't have enough people in at the moment.
But yeah, as I said, Ollie Dempsey sort of taken a bit more outside, while Holmesy has taken the inside.
And then you've got like a player like Brad Close, who normally can push up into the midfield, but normally ends up waning in the forward line.
Yeah, I mean, even Myers can come up a tiny bit.
Myers should come up. He's that good of a player. He should play more midfield.
Yeah, exactly. He's really good at hitting up targets.
And then, big concern with Tom Hawkins getting that foot injury pretty early in the game.
Yeah.
Kind of very innocuous, come out of nowhere.
Yeah, and as I said, it could be...
Yeah.
You don't want to say it, but I mean,
it could be the end of his career. It's the issue.
And he was struggling. Like, like when you hear him talk about, how he wasn't enjoying football, and then, the 2022 season happened, really got him back into it.
I'll be honest.
As I said,
I think he should have retired last year with Jack Riewoldt, because when we played against Geelong last year, they traded jumpers with each other as a signal for like, this could be the last time we face against each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard, as a player. when you get so trained to being used to, like, you can always give more, that sort of mindset is very hard to know
I
when
just
to
don't want
retire.
to think about it as he only played on this year to break Selwood's record of having most games as a Geelong player. Like, that
Yeah,
feels more
I mean, he
selfish than
wouldn't have.
selfless.
But he was still contributing. Like, he was still an important part of their forward
Yeah,
setup.
when
It's just
he's been
it
on,
just
he's
didn't
been pretty
work.
good. And then we just had this
Uh,
massive patch where he just couldn't kick any goals, and now he's just
yeah, and
struggled with
also a
injury.
bit in distribution. Like I said, Jeremy Cameron hasn't always kicked goals this season, but he's been able to provide, distribute the ball. But Hawkins has sort of been stuck deep in there and hasn't quite been this year. And I really hope it doesn't end on this note. Obviously, if he doesn't come back this season, he should probably consider retiring. But that's up to him. Legend of the game, though. And would be sad to see him go if this was his last.
Absolutely. Hopefully he can get back and he can at least get a
Mm,
proper farewell game if it does end up being his last, but
yeah, exactly.
we'll see. All right, I believe you
Mm.
have the next game if you want to run through it.
Once a strong word. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was pretty much an absolute demolition. As I mentioned, I sort of had an appointment halfway through this game, so I mainly watched the first two quarters. Had my appointment, came out, and I was like, yeah, I don't really need to watch the end of this. Um, Port Adelaide absolutely thumped by
You
Brisbane
can
ten
rant as
thirteen.
much as you want.
Yeah, 10-3-73 to 23-14, 152. Honestly, from the first half, Brisbane could have scored more. Port were just very porous. And I will say, like, as much as their backline has got flack, they were somewhat, um, you know, trying to mitigate some of the damage. It was just so many inside 50s, no midfield pressure whatsoever. When Port did get the ball forward, they still struggling to find dangerous spots to hit up. And, as I said, whereas Brisbane, they could keep the ball locked in their front half for ages. Port were just dumb kicking it out, a lot of turnovers at the front half of the ground. It was just way too easy for them. As I said, Port were trying to put the pressure on. They were trying to tackle and all that, but Brisbane just looked classy. I think the big three people offensively, at the very least, for Brisbane that had a feast: Big O, Oscar McInerney,
Yep.
Lucky Neal, and Zach Bailey. Absolutely fantastic ball use. We'll go Lucky Neal first. He had 10 clearances, 18 contested possessions from 37 overall at 89% efficiency, 16 ground ball gets, 7 score involvements, and 6 tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely massive game from him. None of the Port midfielders even came close to this type of consistent effort. The Big O dominated Sweet, which was a very interesting thing to see the end of. Obviously, Ivan Soldo, he got dropped for Sweet, who Ken Hinkley said he was too good to be playing in the Sandfield. A Sandfield? Sandfield. Yeah. It did feel like an episode of Seinfeld. A bit of dark comedy for Port fans.
Lots of comedy errors.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the Big O. I got 31 hitouts, but it was his 8 clearances, 9 score involvements, and 3 goals that killed Port. Hit would kick 5 with 5 marks inside 50.
Mm-hmm.
Dunkley had 10 intercepts. As I said, a lot of forward half intercepts for Brisbane against Port Adelaide. The ball past him, Lester Zorko and Andrews all cleaned up. As well, Archie, Wilmont, Bailey, Danaher, Morrison, Reville all had good games. Man, there was a lot of good performances for Brisbane, so I'm not going to go through all the stats, but I think they deserved a bit of a shout out. And as for Port, Rosie and Butters offensively try hard to lift. Like, they had a fair bit of the ball. I thought it was a bit wasteful at time, but they were at least trying to hack the ball forward. Jason Hall-Francis was also trying, but very off the pace. And the only other person I want to mention, Logan Evans. I thought he was pretty solid defensively on debut for Port Adelaide.
Mm-hmm.
A few solid disposals. And yeah, then it's just really a chasm, and a few players that were thankful for a bit of junk time possession. I think I was listening in the commentary, and it was like Butters and Rosie accounted for 20% of Port's possessions, a bit before half time.
I mean, that sounds about right. Those are the type of players that you expect to have a high possession count.
Yeah, I know, but they weren't even that great. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they were trying, but there wasn't any cohesion. And as I said, when you're turning the ball that much going up the ground, they need to run back defensively, because, the ball comes back with interest, as turning it over in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I've said it time and time again, our defenders are just tired at the moment. Like, honestly, I know there's like a lot of like, oh, well, you only got Asava Radaglia and Zach Thatcher. Zach Thatcher was a bit down and has been a bit down the last few. I think it's a bit burnt out. I think he might not have the tank to play this style where the ball's just constantly being bombed down in there.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, no team can defend that much. Brisbane clearly smashed the inside 50s for the week. I think it was 71. 71 inside 50s. The next biggest was 58 by Sydney. So, there's a lot to defend, and you just can't have that as a team, especially if you're trying to contend. I meant like, and I think also a bit transition to, I've been talking about a lot about wing plays this year, and I don't want to knock Bergman and Bergwijn. Boak's a bit of a liability that we've been playing on the wing. I don't think we should be at this point. But,
no, probably not with his age and how his body is.
No, but, as I said, Bergman and Bergwijn, I think their pace is okay, but they're not stopping some teams going the other way. And I don't want to, as I said, I don't want to pinpoint them because there's plenty of other players that you can do this. But as I said, when it's coming back the other way with interest, it's quite clear that the way we're set up, again, like this wouldn't be as bad. Like, you sacrifice a bit of a defense to attack. Like Brisbane play the same way. But Brisbane are scoring. Port aren't scoring all that much, they're getting the inside 50, but they're struggling to convert. I said last week even, so it's just sort of, Port bomb the ball in defense bad. It gets taken the other way ad infinitum, you know what I mean? It's just a lot of easy chains from the back half for opposition teams, all too easy for them. And, as I said, I probably won't go on this game too much longer, but I do want to say a bit about Brisbane, because obviously being a bit biased talking about Port, but for Brisbane, this is a very important game for them, especially away from home. They have to prove that they can get back into the eight, with these solid away wins. I thought they were pretty far gone when they lost to Hawthorn. I think a bit too much would have to go in their way to get the back into the eight. But they're not too far off it now. And ever since that, disappointing loss, they've sort of, I think they've actually, because I had the stats and metrics before, like to think they weren't too far off the pace. But you know what I mean? Like, again, like a few other teams, it was chains that weren't really turning into a lot of good attack. But right now...
And a lot of it was also just missed opportunities up forward as well. Like, they were very badly inaccurate at the time.
Yeah, they were inaccurate, but I think it was also, as I said, like, I don't want to say, like, Charlie Cameron, for example, like, he's definitely had a down year. And, like, back then, it was still a bit iffy, like, if they could find a way to, like, mitigate that. But now we've got Calamachi and Bruce Reville sort of playing... Bruce Reville's a bit more in the wing. Calamachi's a bit more deeper forward. But both have provided some good distribution up forward and some handy goals. Well, Charlie Cameron's, I think he kicked 2 goals too. He was a bit involved. But you know what I mean? It's like, if he comes good, that's another feather in their cap. If he doesn't, they've still got some upside there. Obviously, the midfield's going absolutely fantastically. Zorko's having probably one of his better years than he's had for a while. I think even defensively too, they haven't looked too bad. Harris Andrews, still going fairly well. So, yeah, no, lots of like about the Lions recently. Brian Lester, I will also say, he's doing pretty well. Just going through the list again because I didn't, as I said, didn't hugely go through the stats, but yeah, no, as I said, I think that's about it. Unfortunately, I didn't see it, but there is a minor injury to Carl Oman. Apparently, he got a bit of a cork thigh. Should be back in though.
That's not too bad.
And yeah, I think that's about all. I really want to say. Apparently, that's right. Willie Rioli didn't quite get back in.
Yeah, he was a late
Quinton
change, I
Narkle.
believe.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Joshy Sin managed to get a game back. He looked good early, but sort of dropped off. But again, sort of hard when you get that thrashed. Yeah, I think that's really it. Oh yeah, I guess I didn't really finish my sweet thought, but you know, as I said, it's a really weird moves by Hinkley. These last few
Yeah, especially
weeks,
in this game, you drop two of your key forwards, your number one ruckman, and
yeah,
you get thrashed by Heights.
yeah, it's sort of, you know, well, I said it's hard because like the forward line wasn't hugely
No, like granted they
issue,
weren't really performing
but
in general, but like
you know what I mean. It's just like
sometimes just having a
you
presence
know,
there is important.
yeah. Well, it's like you got to commit to either small or tall because you know, like even when it was going forward, it's like it was Mitch Georgiadis or nothing really. Like Holly Lord got in there a bit late, but yeah, Darcy Burn-Jones was barely sighted in the first bit. You know, we've had like no Crumming presence ever since Willie Rioli's gone. Granted, it is a huge loss. But you know what? You can't have like the whole forward line contingent on one player. You know what I mean? Like you're just gonna get found out, especially if play goes out of form. And you know, especially since we haven't had that confidence in our tolls, like it's really just been roll the dice, see which one fires. Georgiadis has been the most consistent. Todd Marshall's been a few games where it's been okay, but yeah, overall, you know, as I said, you're playing Jed McEntee as a forward pressure role, but like, where's it going to? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they're not keeping the ball inside 50. They're not finding like players to chip to. So it's like, you know, it's just like a bit of a nothing role, but I'm not blaming him. Like, it's not much for him to do. You know, it's just, yeah. Yeah, as I said, yeah. Um, you know, I said we had a bit of discussion, like a lot of Power fans sort of, not too fond of Hinkley.
Yeah, that's true.
Got booed off the stadium, which I never like to see. Like, you know, coaches are humans. It's a very tough gig. It's not his fault that the Power Board keep on giving him contracts. Very serviceable coach for us, but
that's kind of where the joke lays at the moment. It's like he has a great first half of the season, and that's when they give him the contract, and then he just has a. I was gonna swear for a second there. Then they have a horrible second half.
They either fade out or like, you know, sputter into finals, just get knocked out. But yeah, I think it's just the style they play. You know what I mean? As I said, it's a very forward half contained, but it just hasn't evolved.
No.
And especially since our players have gotten better, like we're still playing the same style than we did when we had like crap small forwards and we had to kick to the boundary every time. Like, you know, you could understand that. And especially since the kick-out rule has been changed, like that really hurt Port Adelaide or, you know, their brand, because they used to be very contained. Like, you remember how football used to be. Like, when you had struggling sides, they would get, you know, they're forced to, like, kick it long, it'll barely escape 50, it'll get turned over back into the forward line, and, you know, so even if you miss, you can just, you know, keep on working until your goal.
Yeah.
Obviously now it's a lot easier to get the ball straight to the wing. You know. So yeah, there just hasn't been enough evolution. There's been calls for Carr, but as I've been saying before, he's apparently had a few more of the tactics this year. So I wouldn't exactly be saying like he's got the job once, Hinkley hands it over. I'd like to see them be a coaching thing, especially if they are going to decide at the end of the year. But yeah, we'll be waiting on that. Like, this isn't really analysis. This is just like my feelings as a Port fan.
Well, before we move on, would you rather them find an outside coach, or would you rather them just pick one of the assistant coaches to take over?
Well, like when every line's doing bad, you can't really say you want an assistant coach. You know what I mean?
No, because an assistant coach runs one of the lines.
Exactly. Like our midfield isn't performing. Like it's one of a slew of teams that's probably, either we get all of our attack from our midfield. But yeah, obviously defensive, they're not quite good enough. Backline are very trying. The way we play means that, they just can't struggle. And you see a lot of the time, it's like, there's always a loose player because, like, when a ball goes in transition, the deepest defender has to come up, which leaves the deepest forward free, making a lot of goals easy. Even if, one-on-one, they actually defend quite well, I think. Like, again, like Asava Radaglia, if everything's going well one-on-one, he's actually pretty good.
Yeah, he's a very, very solid one-on-one defender. He just gets dragged up forward too much.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like you got to blame the way Port set up for that because you know that when you get Asava Radaglia, you know what I mean? Like that's the whole point in getting him because, Port had that need. Alia's meant to be that, because we're not set up that well. Even Alia's playing pretty badly. And as I mentioned, Zach Thatcher, I think he's just like not quite got the tank. I think he needs a good preseason. I wonder if he's going to play out the rest of the year or, be subbed off or what. But I just don't think it's quite up to it, despite him actually going okay defensively. But yeah, as I said, so personally, I think at this point you just got to leave it to the end of the year, see if they make finals or not. But yeah, as I said, even if they make the bottom half, I think there's enough this year to say. I think you just all bears repeating if you go with Hinkley again. There's like nothing really new or interesting from this season that's changed from other seasons despite the personnel change and aside that probably should be making finals. Like there's not too many players
you should absolutely be making finals.
Yeah, like I don't think there's any players that I like really think they should be dropped. They're a massive weight on the team. It's just misused pieces. So yeah, that's about all I want to say for mental health reasons.
Yeah, you don't want to burst the blood vessel.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't get too upset about football, but I must admit, like, I was coming home on a trip home, and like normally, like, I like have a couple of like a bit more pump up albums, for a long trip that I normally like to play going home, and I was like, nah, this is like acoustic sad singer songwriter trip home. Port definitely didn't have me in the mood for some uplifting music, so yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
But new week, new opponent. As always, you just have to move on.
Yeah, pretty much. That's kind of the way the AFL cookie crumbles.
Exactly.
All right, let's go from a depressing game to a pretty interesting game in the 28th Battle of the Bridge between GWS and the Sydney Swans. As most people are probably not surprised, it was a tough day out for GWS, with the Swans just being absolutely dominant and continuing their super strong season. This makes it 10 wins in a row, off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Obviously, they had a bye in between the past couple of weeks, and their only loss this season has been to us in round 3.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I can't exactly remember with round 0 how much games it is, but it's a good
0, 1, 2, lost round 3. I was there for that. Only game that we've won. Oh, actually, it's the second game we've won. But like, here's a funny trend that definitely isn't true, but it's funny. Okay. Every time I've gone to the footy alone this season, which has only been once, we have won. So maybe if I go to the footy alone this Sunday, because no other member of the family is coming with me. I have all the memberships.
Yeah.
So I could take people with me. But if I go alone, maybe we'll beat Carlton.
Ooh, maybe.
Maybe it could be a spicy
Uh,
game. Not well. Granted, we don't have a
uh,
forward line, we don't have a back line, we're barely a midfield, so probably not
yeah.
going to happen. But one can hope.
I got my Carlton supporting mate possibly coming over, so I can't say that I want that to happen, but you know, for your case, I hope it's a good contest.
I don't know. Maybe we just want the number 1 draft pick. Who knows?
Maybe.
All right. Anyway, back to the Battle of the Bridge. So 28th Battle of the Bridge.
Yeah.
I believe the tally now goes up 18-10 off the top of my head. Sydney had won the previous Battle of the Bridge a couple of weeks back. I say a couple of weeks. It's like almost 2 months now.
Yeah, a lot of like back-to-back, what do you call them? Double up games. Quite series and finished actually.
Quite a few actually happen. Yeah, in the same year. I know the showdown happens twice a year at this point, which is actually pretty good for
No, showdown's a bit later. I think it's like still 3 or 4 weeks away.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, it happens twice a year, sort of thing.
Oh no, I'm talking about like double up games that have already finished and it's only just past halfway the season.
Yeah. There's been a couple already.
Like, Port's already beat North Melbourne twice. West Coast obviously had the double up against Essendon.
Obviously, Richmond and Carlton are about to face off again in this upcoming week.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Anyway, GWS Sydney. I don't think anyone's surprised that Errol Golden won the Robert Kirk medal. This is his 3rd one. I believe it might be his 3rd one in a row, because I think he won the last one and then the last one in 2023, which is insane. He is a monster performer. He finished with 41 disposals, 12 clearances, 10 intercepts, 12 marks, 7 inside 50, 7 score involvements, 21 pressure acts, a 1-1 scoreline, and a massive 973 meters gained. That's with ball in hand. Imagine how much he's already been running without the ball. And he nearly ran a kilometer with ball in hand. Like, that's insane.
It's pretty crazy. And you talk about Sydney obviously being a very outside dependent team. And you know what? When you have a player as good as Golden, why don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you just want him distributing.
At this point in time, he doesn't even need to distribute. He can just run coast to coast and no one will touch him.
Yeah, he can. He's gotten a fair amount of goals. Yeah, exactly.
I want to shout out James Rowbottom, because like he's been. Obviously I know media has been talking about him quite a lot, and he's stepped up quite a lot this season. But I think he's still quite underrated in terms of the entire scope of Sydney's team.
Especially the last 2 weeks, like he's been the main focus.
Absolutely.
In that inside midfield. Because like statistically, he got the hand on the ball heaps. Like
he's probably their best contested on baller in the back half.
Yeah,
because like he doesn't take much intercepts, but he's always on the ball.
Yeah. You know, as I said, he's very defensive. Normally just been racking up tackles, you know, doing tagging jobs. But, you know, as I said, he's been smashing clearances. Like, I think the last 3 games is over 10.
And this one as well, which I'm about to mention. So he had finished with 32 touches.
Yeah, I think I was including this one, but yeah.
Yeah, 32 touches, 71.9% efficiency, 20 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s, 11 clearances, 10 score involvements, 6 tackles, 35 pressure acts, and 448 meters gained. Majority of their chains did start with him, and it's pretty insane as to how far they can travel. Sorry, can't hear me. What a tragedy this is. He has completely lost me. Although I can hear myself.
Sorry.
You good?
Yeah, my head disconnected.
Yeah, I had a feeling that's what happened. You good now?
I'm not quite.
Do you want me to just keep rambling on whilst you fix it?
You can, yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'll just switch it to my cam in case you have to disconnect. So we'll talk about Brody Grundy now. I thought Brody Grundy had a pretty phenomenal game as the number 1 ruck. Like, you know, he's pretty much their star recruit. Him and Taylor Adams. Obviously, Taylor Adams had, you know, a lot of time off because he was injured. but Brodie Grundy has starred pretty much every single round. And honestly, I think he could be the best pickup in the entire season. He has made such a massive difference in their midfield and just their entire team structure. And it's great to see because he's had such a harsh run at it, both at Collingwood and at Melbourne. And so his statistics are 28 touches, 13 contested possessions, 31 hitouts, 4 clearances, 7 score involvements, and 5 tackles. He didn't do a lot of hard running because, big man. But he played a lot on ball. He had a really, really fun battle with Kieran Briggs. And I think that he pretty much be all Australian and could end up taking over Max Gawn's role as the key ruck. I cannot hear you, by the way. Might have to disconnect and reconnect Discord. I'll keep going. I do want to shout out, obviously, Heaney and Adams as well. I thought they both had good games. They're just the entire midfield structure is amazing at Sydney. Joel Amati was very, very quiet this week compared to last week. Clearly, GWS watched last week's game and were like, no, we're not going to let that happen. So,
yeah,
you good with that?
Yeah, I think GWS didn't want last week to happen, just full stop.
No, because I'm pretty sure 2 or 3 goals was their max singular scorer on Sydney's side, so they definitely shut down hard singular targets for Sydney, but they still just got outscored.
They're very good at changing up. I can't say off the top of my head I know this for sure, but I would imagine that they have the most unique goal scorers per match. Which, sometimes isn't the best thing because, sometimes it's just a sign of a struggling team with not a great key forward. But for Sydney, it's because they're just finding goals from everywhere.
Yes, that is correct. Sorry, I was looking for something specific. So, just to point out how much they shut down Joel Amati, he finished with 6 touches at 83.3% efficiency, 113 meters gained, 5 contested possessions, 1 intercept, 1 mark, 3 inside 50s, 1 behind, 1 goal assist, 3 score involvements, 4 tackles, 12 pressure acts.
And 4 free kicks against too. So he was
kept very, very quiet. Whereas the only multiple goal scorers were Chad Warner, Tom Papley, Hayden McLean, and Will Hayward. But they also had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They also had 7 individual singular goal scorers too. So they have multiple contributors, and that is huge for a team like that as well.
Oh, for sure. Like as I said, it's pretty massive, and with that amount, it's very hard because when you think about finals where sometimes some avenues of goals can get restricted, and you might not get the exact game plan you want. To have so many, strings to your bows for handicaps, it's very promising. As I said, it's a bit early to be thinking about finals. A lot can happen, but
probably not for Sydney.
We're all pretty convinced of Sydney's credentials. It's up to other teams to try and prove that they might challenge up against them.
Sydney have pretty much already locked in top 4. There's no doubt about that at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. It would take so much.
Obviously, whether they make the grand final itself, that remains to be seen. Yeah. However, they will they'll pretty much get 2, if not 3 home games if they lose the qualifier. In Sydney. So if they make it that far, the only game that they'll be a massive test will be the grand final itself because it's not played in
Sydney. Bloody Victorians.
You can blame the MCC for that. They've got all the money.
It's 95 years to go.
Yeah, and that's probably going to get renewed multiple years down the line anyway. To talk about GWS a bit though, since I assume you heard a little bit about my Brodie Grundy chat at least.
So it was a pretty good matchup against
Kieran Briggs.
Kieran Briggs, that's it.
And like we've talked at length about how much we really like Kieran Briggs here. Like he is probably one of the best ruckmen in
one
this
of the best
competition.
up and coming.
Absolutely.
Obviously it's easy to forget Darcy's so young, but with him being injury prone, you'd probably say Briggs is the next.
I mean, Briggs is their number one ruckman, so you can't really fault them too much.
Yeah. So, but he's been really good against some pretty tough opponents.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to talk about Finn Callaghan. I did talk about Finn Callaghan last week because I thought he was really good. Actually, did they play last week? Yes, they did play last week. Sorry. Finn Callaghan, really strong game, solid performance, 27 touches, 74.1% efficiency, 10 contested possessions, 8 inside 50s, 6 clearances, 6 score involvements, 20 pressure acts, and 578 meters gained. And former co-captain Callum Ward, I thought he had a pretty solid performance, winding back the clock a little bit. Finished with 19 touches at 89.5% efficiency, 5 contested possessions, 4 marks, 6 clearances, 7 score involvements, 14 pressure acts, and 2 goals himself.
He's probably a couple of weeks from the old dog coming back.
He is normally on halfback, right? He definitely pushed up forward a little bit this week, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, as I said, he's sort of drifting on the outside. I mean, it's just sort of a where you need him sort of player.
Again, especially getting older, definitely definitely in the twilight years of his career, he's still putting up pretty solid performances.
Put him on the because he always got one wing that normally gets favoured. One wing you put your slightly faster player, the other one you might put a taller target, or someone who's really veteran like Ward, who's pretty good with his disposal. Trying to generate some stuff. So on the switch, when you might have a bit more space.
Yeah, exactly right. And thankfully, no injuries out of this week as far as I've seen. So it was a pretty clean match, and another win for Sydney in the rivalry belt.
Yeah, I would say GWS has said. I think it's a bit like last week where so they got a bit of their game plan going, but I think they're just not overly that clean sometimes.
Their key players are absolutely getting shut down pretty hard, like Hogan, Green, both Greens, in fact, actually. I know Tom Green had put up some pretty solid stats, but I believe he was getting tagged half the game at least.
Yeah. At
least off the top of my head.
I think Tom Green might have had the James Jordan tag?
Possibly. I can't remember. But I know one of them was tagged, and that's why they were pretty quiet.
Because I know the other way, Bedford took a role on Chad Warner, who still had an okay game considering.
Bedford had pretty high pressure game, but otherwise very little in terms of disposal stats and things like that.
Yeah.
So, play your roles where you get them and just keep trying to contribute, keep putting up decent performances, just working out, your spot in the game plan, essentially.
Yeah.
And if you're getting tagged or being hard shut down, figure out how to break it.
Yeah, as I said, last couple of weeks hasn't been that. I know they beat Port, but obviously it was a pretty dire game. But
Port was also, we've talked at length about that.
Pretty dire, yeah. But you know what I mean? I think it's just like still a young team. I just think there's a bit of finesse that's been missing. That might come back. You never know, but. Yeah, as it would be a bit more clean because they had a similar amount of inside 50s. But yeah, it's a pretty big disparity. And, as I said, obviously I'm mainly just judging from the turnover count, not actually watching it. But yeah, as I said, just seeing like GWS, especially in their forward half, wasn't quite as clean as Sydney, who can be pretty ruthlessly clean.
Absolutely. All right, you've got the brief notes on the next one because I don't know how at length you want to talk about the next couple, but go for it.
Melbourne and North Melbourne. Honestly, I mean, there's a bit of a section on the game that's worth talking about a bit more. But yeah, surprisingly, like I think we mentioned, we were like, man, we need this game to be good just to get an exciting game of football for the week.
Yeah, because like you look at it and it's like Melbourne aren't in the greatest form. North Melbourne finally found some decent form. They were probably the only team coming up that could really, like one of the teams out of the bottom 4 that could actually get a win against a slightly decent team. And they were pretty close. To give them credit.
Look, yeah, as I said, I think this game it's a weirdly deceptive game, I'll say this. Because as I said, I actually watched it and then turned it off at three-quarter time, thinking it wasn't gonna be much of a contest. And then obviously North came from 39 points down just before the final quarter, to nearly take a victory away from it. The final score was 11-4-70 to 10-7-67.
It's nearly another
But I think
miracle on grass.
yeah, it might be for yeah. But honestly, like North actually were okay in the I'll say first quarter and a bit. But they were just horrendously inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were like 2 goals 7 at one point, or at least at the half, maybe 3. And yeah, after the second quarter, they would just never miss again and look like pretty accurate. But yeah, Melbourne were really just relying on the toll, what do you call it? The toll forward matchups, to separate themselves from North for a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty big set shot game overall. Was 24 set shots for both teams to 10 general play goals. So not much happening when the ball went to ground. Also not too much happening on transition. Yeah, as I said, Melbourne's defense was very trying. Couldn't really move the ball from their back half as North were rallying that comeback. There was a fair few players that had really big games, like Zerha and pretty much the entire North Melbourne midfield. But yeah, as I said, really just wasn't enough. I guess we'll start on the Melbourne players that were really good because they technically won. It doesn't really feel like it, but they did.
Yeah, go on.
Trent Rivers and Gawn probably had the best visually looking game.
Mm-hmm.
I think Trent Rivers spent a lot of time in the inside midfield, was probably the best distributor, I'll say, and Gawn setting up a lot of good tap works as well as getting 5
Was
clearances.
Rivers playing much more of the Petrarca sort of role?
I guess. Like, he's played inside mid a few times. It's just like, I guess you're right. Like, I guess he just got a bit more of that rotation. But also, as I mentioned a bit early, Clayton Oliver, he got absolutely shut down. So it was just sort of, they needed another player to set up because Viney, it wasn't his cleanest game, but he was definitely the most important. His 12 clearances over doubled the next best for Melbourne, which was Sparrow and Gawn, who I mentioned earlier. They got 5 each. And he was only one of 2 players for the Demons to get more than 1 centre clearance. I think the other one was Sparrow. And he got 6, which was 29% of the centre clearances for the team. Neil Bullen and May were pretty solid. Neil Bullen was solid on the wing. May, Tomlinson, and McDonald were pretty solid in defence, especially when North Melbourne was starting to bombard. May led intercept marks with 6. Kynan Brown, I'll give him a shout out because he may have had one of the best one possession games. He had a rundown saving tackle. Probably was looking to be a breakaway for a North score when they needed 1 goal to hit the lead. So good on him. Son of Nathan Brown. A player I never really watched, but I think he retired in 2005.
Yeah, he was a Melbourne player. I believe he was only a Melbourne player. So Kynan Brown comes under the father-son rule.
I think really just in the father-son, like 153 or something.
Yeah, it was pretty close cutoff.
Yeah. But yeah, let's get to North Melbourne. And honestly, if you're just looking at the midfield, you would have thought they won by ages. ODU, Sheasel were absolutely fantastic. Jai Sinkin, he's continuing to lift after a slow season. Wardlaw and Cherry, also, like all of them were absolutely fantastic. Sorry, I didn't quite get the stats for that, but I'm pretty sure Harry Sheasel, 27 disposals, 67% efficiency, so not quite as clean as Luke Davies-Uniacke, but also scored 2 goals. Luke Davies-Uniacke, I think he was probably the one of the better ones for the night.
Mm-hmm.
He had 31 possessions, 84% efficiency, 17 contested possessions, 11 bound gets, 8 clearances, 7 score involvements, and 3 tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Wardlaw, as I said, also pretty huge. But also, I'd like to give a bit of shout outs to North Melbourne's defense. Charlie Comben, looking to be the best North defender this year, absolutely clamped down on Petty. Had an excellent game with 12 intercepts, which was the game high, as North Melbourne was pretty good compared to most. Jackson Archer as well, talking about Sons of a Gun, absolutely creamed Fritch. Didn't have too many possessions, but you could see a lot of his efforts. Absolutely fantastic. It reminded me a lot of his father, Glenn Archer, who I did see a tiny bit of.
I did actually get to see some of Glenn Archer play, and he was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. He was just so... Again, it was just that combination of very athletic and very smart, very rarely out of position. And obviously, Zerha obviously played out of skin, kicked 4 in the last quarter. Not in the last quarter, but in the back half of the game. And Phillips, another, now that he wasn't subbed out, absolutely smashed Oliver, held him to 14 possessions, very low impact. He was just bombing the ball long. Well, Oliver was, so, 14 possessions, not many of them were very good. Yeah, so back-to-back weeks is absolutely fantastic for him. And yeah, as I said, North looked really okay. A very gutsy effort. If I was saying last week, it was very damaging, that drop-off, as I said, it gets in your head a bit, it feels like you can get run down a lot, to come back and turn it around. Shows that they've got a bit of a grit and a bit of gut, and I like that. As I said, you can't judge them just from last week. You see teams that can do that, especially if they don't get the win. But I think with these 2 games back to back, it was very good to see. And yeah, I still think, again, they struggle to convert midfield dominance into direct score. And when you see some of the domination, I actually saw a visual, again, Emlyn Brees, someone who I refer to a bit, credit to the boys. He actually had both of, North Melbourne's period of dominance in the last 2 games as a single graphics. And, as I said, they get a lot of clearances, but a lot of them are still turnovers, whether good or bad. So if they can link up the chains, get it in their forward line a bit better, they might look to get a bit even, especially, as I said, they don't really have much outside movement. Again, another a bit of a weird sub, Dylan Stevens being the sub. I still don't understand the logic of having, like, your weakest part of the game be your substitute. As I said, last time it was Stevenson, this time it was Stevens. They do try, just haven't really looked that great this year.
I don't know what Clarko's thinking in that regard. Is it just a lack of personnel? Because I know they do have a bunch of injuries, but I don't know how important they are in terms of what they can use and what they can't.
I didn't really say they have that. Like, I don't think they're missing that much. I just think they expected more from the recruitment. But again, I think you got to put that a bit on the setup as well. But yeah, as I said, it's just, for whatever reason, it's just not happening on the outside. It's giving them a lot of inconsistency. Obviously, you can't just dominate the inside. It's very unsustainable. And as we've seen a lot this year, like, North Melbourne's had that big drop-off. And I've said it's a bit to the run, a bit to, not having a lot of full-quarter performances, that might affect how you run out games. But again, if you don't have much outside run, it's very easy to get quick transition. It limits the nicer entries you can get inside forward. But, as I said, there's still a lot good about this game. These are just problems that North have for all the year. But in spite of this, they're still trying. So hopefully they can get a win out of this good bit of form while they have it. As for Melbourne, they look sticky taped together, don't they?
Yeah,
what I mean? It's just
barely surviving.
Barely, I know. Even their dominant pairings weren't really damaging. Like, North probably, could have been even or in front for that half. Like, it was really only that bit in the third when Melbourne got a run of 3. And credit to North only getting, like, they've had a lot bigger runs of 3 goals. So, credit to their defense for being actually okay for most of the game. But yeah, they were just bailed out by some high-level performances. They've got some new kids to try and plaster the cracks. And, some of them mean, doing okay, actually. But, as I said, it's just some of their experienced players getting dominated, and it's very hard to tell week in, week out, which one of these players or even which one of these lines are going to falter. Like, obviously, we saw last week, the week against Freo, where the defense got absolutely smacked around. We've had a few games where the entire midfield, not just this week with Petrarca out, but a few others where they've had a lot of lows. As I said, Oliver's had a pretty down year, but even Viney has had a few down games. I think Neil Bullen, like in terms of just midfielder in general, is probably being the most consistent.
I agree, actually, especially since he's even become more of a tagging role as well, and not just a hard runner.
Yeah, I said I wouldn't quite call him a tagger, but like,
Oh no, he's not a full-time tagger. Like, he does play multiple
Yeah,
roles,
I know what you mean. Like, he prevents, wingers from doing exactly what they want to do. And as I said, when you got teams like Sydney, which they can, it's a very important role. So, as I said, runs both ways. I know what you mean by that. So, but yeah, as I said, and the forward line, as I said, Jacob Van Rooyen still struggling. Kazai Pickett's had a very up and down year. French, as we mentioned, has gone a few games, has gone missing. So,
which is crazy considering he is one of the best set shot players in the competition. He's just
Well, I mean, as I said, 4 marks. I don't think any of them were inside 50, and maybe one, but
it really shows just how cobbled together their team currently is, even though they don't have a massive amount of injuries.
Yeah, like, so it just seems a bit structureless at times. I said I signed for it, but I think a few Melbourne fans have probably, done the ranting that I did earlier with their team. I think both have probably been the most frustrating, teams this year when it comes to how they're playing versus what they want to do.
Yeah.
Despite Melbourne starting off pretty well. Like, you remember, like, they lost May at the start of the year. They were holding on defensively. They weren't scoring all much, but they were still, cohesive. And then it's just
because May isn't their key structure piece. He's kind of just that big body who
guards the second player. Like, yeah, but like,
and granted, I've never had any sort of respect for May. Like, I.
Oh no, he's an absolute. I wouldn't invite him to my dinner parties.
No, absolutely. Absolutely,
I don't have many dinner parties, but he's definitely not invited. And got a bit of a spine for staging, which, like, I don't even hate him for that, because if you're going to be a jerk, you can kind of be funny about it. Like, I'd rather watch May play than someone like Brian Lake in his heyday, any of those
if you're going to do it like that, then I agree. But like,
at least May's funny.
If I'm going to watch a Melbourne defender play, I'd much rather watch Jake Lever than watch Stephen May.
Oh yeah, I like Lever. He's a bit hot-headed too, but he's, again, he just seems a lot more chill outside of that. But again,
he's a much stronger glue for their backline than May is.
Yeah, it's hard to judge. I don't want to like go too into that, but yes, I said. But honestly, I think it's just, again, is a communication between midfield and defense, I think, as well. And you're right. I think Lever is more adaptable than May. Which is what they're missing at the moment.
Yeah, it is something we have talked about at length, is how important Lever is.
Exactly. But yeah, as I said, I don't think May, like, even this game, like, he wasn't that bad. I mean, he was actually all right.
No, yeah, he did put up decent numbers, but it's like Lever is clearly a much more dependable.
Yeah. Well, I said, I just think they're leaking way too many inside 50s. Like, especially in the midfield. This is one of the few games where, as I said, they were because it wasn't really from stoppage, it was from forward half turnovers. So as I said, that transition, which is where you want a bit of run options from your, not so much your inside midfields, but when you don't have that link up there, it's sort of hard to shift it out from your defense, which caused repeat inside 50s. As I said, North had that dominance in the first quarter, couldn't capitalize on it. And then, capitalized perfectly in the last half. So on average, it was actually probably a fairly even game. It's just they had like a ridiculously bad first bit and a ridiculously good second bit. So, like honestly, I don't think it was just that back half. I think there's a lot of good from North that game, but yeah, it was very patchy all the same. But it wasn't the best match to watch. Not a huge amount of really standout performances, except by the North Melbourne's midfield.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I said, Melbourne's just got a lot of soul searching to do at the moment. But yeah, it did produce a very nice last quarter though, despite it being a bit of a game overall.
And to be fair, like this is something we've been talking about pretty much all season, especially like specifically for North Melbourne, is that finding consistency, finding the game style, the game plan that you want to actually play, and being able to decently execute it. And they have the past couple of weeks. Like maybe they're not winning games,
West Coast,
but they're
game against West Coast they win.
They might not be winning games, but they're much better than what they were at the start of the season. And this is what we want to see.
As I said, it's just that danger of when you lose those games, because they looked respectable for the first, I'd say, 3 games before getting towed up. So you want to curb that drop off. And as I said, like they're clearly a one-dimensional team at the moment. So
they're still trying to
year goes on,
figure out their multiple patterns.
You just need those other areas to lift enough. And I think to their credit, I think their defense has been lifting. And I think this is where, again, they keep another team under 100. Like that was a running joke at the start of the year. And now it's, again against Melbourne, but still you have to give them credit. And I said Comben looked pretty good. As the other one, who am I thinking of? Jackson Archer, of course, who I mentioned. Like McDonald even looks okay getting back into the side. Aiden Core, he was a lot worse at the start of the year than he is now. So, maybe they get a bit of occasion there. That's about all. I think Toby Pink was the only injury. I think, again, that was a bit more... I think it was like one of those precautionary / tactical sub.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't even commented, but I think Salem was the same thing because he was subbed off, but I saw him getting iced up, even though they mentioned it was a tactical sub.
It might have been just a precautionary thing.
Yeah, exactly. But also, another thing that was going against this game wasn't the best commentary team ever.
No, I agree.
I was listening to a few records that I got back, and I was like, I'll finish this off before while watching the first quarter. And I was like, am I like going to miss anything with the commentary team? And then I saw it pop up, and I was like, no. I think it was like one of those like Nathan Brown on the not Nathan, Campbell Brown on the special comms.
Don't diss Nathan Brown. Don't do that.
Nah. I forgot who else it was, but it wasn't very... I think it might have been Soderstrom and someone else, but yeah.
Yeah, that's not a great commentary team, I will be honest with you, but, take what you can get, I guess.
Like, as much as I rag on Brian Taylor, Matthew Richardson, and, like, Scott Selwood, like, it's still better than their B-side. Channel 7 commentary team's just not that great at the moment. But...
Yeah. Oh, well. I mean, like... Yeah, just going back to my point really quickly. It's like, you might not be winning games, but that's not a bad thing in comparison to where you were at the start of the season. Same with West Coast.
It's better than being gutter trash, yeah.
And to some degree, even same for us. Like, we may not be winning games, but we are playing up the teams even if we can't run out games.
Exactly. Like, I'm still impressed. It's like really been 3 trash performances. Like, again, Brisbane towed you up. I think it was...
Granted, we didn't play very well against Hawthorn going second half onwards, but we still put up like a decent first half.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so as I said, like there's only been a few games, despite your injury list, where you've been really, really off the pace. North Melbourne were looking to get like week in, week out flogged. They've curbed that a bit. So yeah, interesting to see how they have the back half. Hopefully they can notch.
West Coast have
You know,
definitely been a
I
lot
still,
more consistent over the past 2 months, which has been really good to
yeah,
see. And I'm about to talk about
I
that
still
as
think it's
well.
yeah. I think it's 3 wins for North at this juncture, but yeah, we'll see. A bit to work on. Again, I'm not sold on the coaching, but there's still some direction. Yeah, as I said, it's just a bit of a mixed bag in terms of team structure. They're probably the worst in terms of that. Is the bottom four?
No, they're probably North is probably towards the end of the season. They're probably going to be looking at going into the draft, maybe looking at some key trades, just trying to get some more
Yeah,
experience into their midfield and their backline.
exactly.
Because
And
I
again,
think
it's
their
just
forward
like
line is fine, especially with Nick Larkey being the spearhead. But I think they
yeah,
just need some better players,
well,
probably some more
their
experienced players to be able to help with
conversions
their transition.
their conversion per inside 50 is fantastic. Like it's one of the better ones in the league. They just don't get it in there often enough. And as I said, I mean, it's a bit hard to tell because obviously, again, when you're inside midfield, it's going that hard, and you can get these breakaway clearances. Maybe that's just a byproduct
Yeah,
of their only attack has been their best looks. Um, you know, but yeah, so they just need to work on volume, which is a bit,
yeah.
a bit saying where they're at, but
Maybe they look at well, they have some pretty solid on balls, so maybe they look at key transition players either outside
yeah, on
or
the
even one on the
outside,
inside,
exactly.
and
As, I mean, look,
probably a key intercept player as well.
yeah, their key position has to be number one,
Mhm.
and then you might look, maybe a round two, round three. You put the best wing player in, see what you can get. Maybe even trade up if there's a good one for it. But
And even look
yeah,
at
as
other
I said,
teams. Look at players who like maybe have 1 year out of contract or are already out of contract.
yeah,
See who's available on the market.
it's hard to say that.
Oh yeah, because
Again,
like people don't
when
want
the
to go to
players
North,
have
but
well, not only that, they've brought in players like Liam Shields, Dylan Stevens, Jaden Stevenson, and it just hasn't worked for them.
mm,
Also, still been all right, actually, especially these last couple of weeks. But Darcy Tucker, um, as I said, he sometimes goes on the wing. So, they got.
like it's not like they have bad pieces. They just have pieces that aren't working out for them.
Yeah, I'll just say it's like they need to aim for a bit more than what they've been aiming for.
Mm.
So they've gone for those iffy players that might develop, but there's not really been a team that's allowed players to develop. So they've just remained stagnant. But you can see why. It's just,
Yeah, it's just
you don't want to be like a recruiter and be like, hey, we're not sure if we're going to get more out of you. Like, you just can't say that to players. You're always trying to convince
no.
yourself that you can
You
get
want to
more out
convince
of
them that
players.
you
But
can make them into superstars, but
exactly. But it just hasn't worked out for them. So, yeah, see how they go in terms of next year.
yeah,
But this year, it's a tiny bit of optimism right now.
yeah, no, pretty much just keep doing what you're doing and hopefully get some more positives out rather than negatives.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move on to Essendon v West Coast at Marvel Stadium. Oh, was it Marvel or was it MCG? I can't remember. Anyway, it was in Melbourne.
Yeah.
It wasn't Marvel, actually. I remember. It was pretty interesting game, actually. Like high scoring, very intense in the middle. A lot of forward gameplay from both ends. A lot of high scorers from both ends. Even if
Yeah.
inaccuracies did hurt the Eagles pretty badly.
As a neutral, it's one of the best outcomes of a game for like teams you're not that invested in.
Yeah,
It's like if I was a fan of this team, I'll be a bit annoyed that the defense is a bit wishy-washy, but I'm not, so who cares?
like, do I care that Essendon are top three and I don't think they should be? Yes, but do I really like what West Coast are showing off right now after the past couple of years that they've had? Absolutely.
Yeah,
Like for a team that struggled so much, it's really good to see them, even if this was a losing game. They had such a strong
yeah.
performance. It was just inaccuracy that kind of really hurt them.
And especially since this was like the first coming together game, obviously Oscar Allen coming back into the side.
Mm-hmm.
So you've the first game this year that we've seen Oscar Allen, Waterman, and um,
Yo,
Darling, I
Darling,
suppose.
yeah, true.
Uh, yeah. I mean, obviously, he's a bit maligned, but he's still been performing okay.
Mm.
And, first game back is still signs. Oscar Allen, you'll probably mention it. Two
I
goals, four.
yeah, I'm gonna
Uh,
go through him.
yeah. So, yeah, like a bit of positive there. Just, yeah, as an overall bit inaccurate.
Mm.
Whereas Essendon took the most of their chances.
Absolutely, but well, scoreline kind of tells it all. 19-8, 122 to 13-14, 92. Like, if a couple of those behinds from West Coast, especially Oscar Allen's four behinds, were actually goals, it would have been a much more closer ball game,
Yeah.
other than a 30-point gap at the
Yeah,
end.
yeah. I mean, obviously, it's hard to tell because, as it brings us a centre bounce,
Mm-hmm.
but, West Coast were doing pretty well from that. 3-5 from centre bounce for West Coast to 3-0. So, it might have favoured them. As I said, you might have generated more from converting more. So,
Yeah.
Bit of a missed opportunity there, but is what it is.
Yeah, that's true. So a player that I'm going to mention first for Essendon is a player that has come under a little bit of scrutiny over this season. Hasn't, especially from Essendon supporters, hasn't had the sort of games that you would expect intercept defenders to have. But Jaden Laverde, I thought had one of his best games of the season, maybe best games of his career. 28 touches at 96.4% efficiency, 6 contested possessions, 11 intercept possessions, 11 marks, 4 score involvements, and 5 tackles. I think he was genuinely their most important player in their backline. He did so much intercept work. He was pretty much all over the back half.
Yeah.
They really, and granted, they had 27 scoring shots for West Coast, but he did so much of preventing so much more from happening in that forward line.
Especially in that last quarter, where they really locked down. Also in terms of generation, Essendon scored heaps. 11-2 from the defensive half.
Yeah, their defensive chains
yeah.
going forward was massive.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, he's one of the ones, as well as Nick Martin, ball in hand, that you sort of want to be starting one of those.
And speaking of which, like, to be able to have successful defensive chains, you got to have a hard runner through the midfield, and that's Xavier Desma.
Mm-hmm.
20 touch. He second game back from injury. 20 touches, 90% efficiency, 5 contested possessions, 9 marks, 6 score involvements, 10 pressure acts, and a goal. I believe he had like 400 and something meters gained. So a lot of usual hard running through the wings. He might have been 5. I can't remember how high it was. I didn't actually write it down. But again, strong winger player. One of my favorite winger players, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Desma?
Yeah, I really like watching Desma.
No, I was going to say, maybe it's got steroid. It only says 185 on mine, but...
Oh, okay. Maybe he just had a lot more, maybe did a lot less running, but a lot more ball transition movement with the ball.
Yeah. You might have just read another player stat, but, I mean, he was good. It was only 185, but he was up in a lot of link-ups. I didn't watch this apart from the last quarter, so I can't comment too much. But yeah, no, he's... Yeah, I said he can get involved in a lot. As I said, sometimes he just runs with the ball instead of passing it up forward.
Yeah, like granted, he's still trying to find his groove back from injury, but he's still putting up decent performances.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, stats-wise, it was a pretty good game.
He's definitely one of Essendon's most important pickups of the year. Probably not the most important pickup. I think Mackay might actually be.
It's hard, yeah. That's a bit hard, but.
Because he's been out for half the season with injuries. He can't really say too much, but
it's a good off season at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. And then final Essendon player I want to talk about specifically is the package, Jake Stringer. Kind of have to mention him. 5 goals, 20 touches at 65% efficiency, 8 contested possessions, 10 marks, 5 clearances, 10 score involvements, and 5-1 scoreline. He was pretty much key component in their forward line. I believe they had multiple contributors, multiple scorers as well, but he pretty much led the pack all afternoon.
Yeah, well, I was saying like last couple of weeks the mosquito fleet's been a bit off, but another person he did well, Mac Welfie.
Mm.
Him and Stringer doing a lot more on the ground. Stringer again, he's fantastic at forward half stoppage clearances. He can either generate a lot or get that nice dish out. So he's always high in score involvements. He just, sort of went missing for a couple of games. But no surprise when he goes well, Essendon tends to do well.
I know we mentioned last week that 2 meter Peter had got shut down very, very hard, but he did also have a fairly decent performance and rotated well with him and Langford in the forward line. Gave him a lot of options further up the ground, so Stringer could play deep forward. And it was, that's what you want to get out of Peter Wright and Kyle Langford for that fact, is that you want to be able to always have one of them deep forward so the others can play up the ground and ensure they're a solid inside 50.
Yeah, because neither of them are like high possession gatherers. Especially Langford, he can be like 4 goals, 6 possessions, and still have like a really good game.
And Stringer can do the same thing if he only needs to play deep forward, but he's a well-rounded forward player.
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on their rotation because Essendon, still fairly young midfield. Sometimes they need Stringer more directly in stoppages. But, I said this week he hasn't. I wouldn't even say, like, stats-wise, he was that much into the major clearances. He was just, again, forward half stoppages, producing a lot.
He was where he needed to be, pretty much.
Yeah, the rest of the 4 midfielders did pretty well.
Yeah. I do want to give a brief shout out to Nate Caddy, who got moved into the starting 22 because Todd Goldstein was a late out. He was managed. No injury, probably just needed a rest, maybe come up a little bit sore, that sort of thing. He didn't put up great numbers, but I thought he still had a pretty solid performance. Just consistent all over the ground. It was very good game time for him for being so young. So, good to see him get that
Especially
opportunity.
As a key forward from an emergency. Like, it's very hard to just, replace someone in that forward position. Because obviously with leading patterns and all that, you want to have that week's training session to really knuckle down on it. But, still got, what was it? A couple of marks, 2 goals. Yeah.
He put up some decent numbers. Again, young player, get some more experience into him. Nothing wrong with that. For West Coast, Elliot Yeo continues to be in solid form. 20 touches, 16 contested possessions, 5 inside 50, 7 clearances, 8 score involvements, 13 tackles, and 30 pressure acts. If that isn't his 2018 All Australian form, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's had a fantastic year. As mentioned, when he meant locked up, I meant contract-wise, which is good for the Eagles because they need him in the midfield.
Absolutely. Well, I think he could end up just being... But he started the Eagles, right?
No, he started in Brisbane.
Oh, there you go. More you know. I was going to say...
He wasn't technically one of the 5 that went in the year where they lost 5 players. It was like Jack Crisp, Jared Pollock, and a few others. He went as a free agent while he was fairly young.
Was he from WA?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because I don't actually know. That probably would have been a contributing factor if it was.
I think it was just Brisbane were pretty crap.
Oh, that too. Brisbane weren't very good.
Yeah, this was like 2014.
But yeah, like he's putting up monster performances. He's pretty much in All Australian form, with or without Harley Reid there to back him up. He's looking really, really good. Yeah. Liam Duggan is also very much helping him out in that way, having a rotating halfback to midfielder. And I really like what I'm seeing from Yeo. It's great that he's in such solid form, especially after he had such a bad run with injury.
Okay, yeah. So he is from WA.
Oh, there you go.
Played for East Fremantle in the Waffle. And so
he pretty much just wanted to go home and got an opportunity.
Brisbane. Yeah, exactly. 27 games for Brisbane, 1 goal.
And whereas compared to West Coast, and he's putting up monster performances, like you could put in the Brisbane.
Yeah. He was playing more of halfback for Brisbane.
That's fair enough.
As you normally do with midfielders in their first few years. But absolutely solid player. Sort of like Jack Redden as well. sort of came to West Coast, really pinched out as their midfield, as I said, sort of rebuilded. Yo's been the one consistent player from that time.
And and despite all the injuries, he's come back stronger. He's come back better.
Well loved too. Like I said, I think in the media there was a few people wondering if Yo was going to come back from injury in this transition side, but most people, I think, in general, Eagles supporters stuck by him. And it's good to see that sort of being repaid.
I think he's the sort of veteran that they definitely need in the midfield. He's the sort of player that's probably going to shape Harley Reid if Harley Reid wants to stay.
Yeah.
Because I think he's going to be a really great mentor.
There are people monitoring this conversation, Blazy. You don't want West Australians threatening you by saying Harley Reid might leave.
Well, hey, look, he's a Victorian, and if any team could really use him right now, I'm going to be honest, it's us. But the point stands is that, like, if he wants to stay, Yo is going to be a really good benefactor and a really good mentor.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for his development, he's a really good. Like, you always want like someone helping you, especially with someone like Reid, who's not exactly maybe going to be like a 30 to 40 possession getter. So the more you can have around,
you don't have to be a high possession getter. You just have to be strong-bodied, able to break tackles.
Exactly. It's like you want other people lifting the general stats while your like 20 possessions are like contributing to 10 goals. You know what I mean? So,
it's like he already gets this comparison, but it's like Prime Dustin Martin, for example.
Exactly.
Wasn't always the highest possession getter, but was always able to be strong when he had the ball, able to break tackles, very good transition, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, as we mentioned earlier, Oscar Allen, very lively for his first game back from injury. Would have been nice for his first game to actually be in front of a West Coast crowd rather than an Essendon crowd. But I think he relished in the high-pressure game anyway. 13 touches, 5 contested possessions, 9 marks, 10 score involvements, 17 pressure eggs, and a 2-4 scoreline. If that was all 6 goals, it definitely would have been a much more interesting game instead of a 30-point deficit. But you can't complain, considering he still put up decent numbers for a forward. Like him and Waterman and Darling, as you mentioned as well, it's like they've got a pretty solid rotation now that they're all fit and healthy.
Yeah. Like it was still 7 goals contributed all up by those 3, so
because Jake Waterman kicked 3 off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So
Waterman 3, Darling 2.
Yeah, so overall, might have been a 30-point loss, but there's still a lot to really like about the performance that West Coast gave. It's just about, inaccuracies did hurt them a lot, whether that was set shots or just from ground ball. For Essendon, you've stabilised at 3rd for now. There's definitely still teams fighting to have that position from you, but you've put up a valiant fight, no injuries, thankfully. You're looking really solid, and you should be able to keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah, you can go have a go at Essendon, but there's a lot of teams around, like, mucking around. Like, you can't say, Essendon don't deserve to be there.
I'm not faulting them that they don't deserve to be there. I mean, for some people, they probably don't deserve to be there. But, like, they fought really hard to get to where they are. It's just whether they can keep it.
I think the only, like, Carlton and Collingwood probably are the 2 teams that, like, deserve to be there. Collingwood's obviously had injuries, hampering their ability to lock down that position.
I think at this point in time, I think Carlton are definitely going to vie more for 2nd rather than trying to even take 1st, for example.
But, like, when you're looking at the top 4, like, the most threatening teams to the top 4 are technically outside the 8. Like, Brisbane Western Bulldogs are playing better football than Fremantle to Melbourne on the ladder.
Yeah, that's true.
They just started the year so crap. So, like, why can't Essendon be a top 4 team? Like, they've done what they needed to. Fremantle,
because it's just a cursed top 4 if both Carlton and Essendon are up there.
Oh, I know. Like, 3 Victorian teams, I hate to see it too, but credit is to credit.
It's not that I hate to see it; it's just a whole rivalry thing.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. I just think people have got to stop saying like Essendon don't deserve when we've got a competition where that's been so fluctuating. And they've been able to be consistent to the teams that they've been able to face. So I mean, as I said, I don't think they'll beat Sydney. Like, if it was Sydney versus Essendon grand final, like, I would put so much more faith in Sydney winning.
Oh, yeah,
It's not
absolutely.
funny,
but yeah.
As I said,
it's
got as much right as any other top 4 team to be there, or any other.
Apart from maybe the top 2, the rest of the 8 is still very much up in the air.
Yeah, as I said, I think Collingwood had technically got it together. As I said, they just, started a bit slow and then have just been hampered by injuries.
All right, you've got the last game.
Yeah, final match of the round. Another sleepy one, I'll say. Again, I've moved up our sitting, so just after this, watched the end of the Essendon West Coast game, and then sort of just had like a half nap, half watch of the Fremantle Suns game at Optus Stadium. The final score was 12-13-85 to 10-5-65. So, it wasn't without scare or resistance, but for the most part, Fremantle had their way with a Gold Coast team that was very much struggling to defend against Freo's faster turnover-based ball movement. It was a bit of a defensive blip from Freo early, but for the most of the day, they were able to defend fairly well for most of Gold Coast. The only player that really, for the Gold Coast, got into the game too much was Sam Day, especially coming in for King. I thought he presented really well. I have to look at the stats because I didn't quite finish up, but I think he had a fair few good marks, and 7 marks, 3 goals, and was by far the most threatening person for the Gold Coast. Fremantle's mids dominated the day, set up for a lot of attack. Especially Hayden Young, absolutely fantastic game, very classy, 3 goals. I mentioned Freo's defense. Luke Ryan absolutely smashed up a reasonably informed Ben Long. Been a bit quiet the last couple of weeks, but he's normally been pretty good. As I mentioned, Gold Coast arguably are a bit too dependent on Max King and Ben Long, both firing. If it's not them, it's normally their midfield.
Yep.
And in this game, their midfield just weren't really in the game. In terms of other Fremantle players that weren't very good, I thought Clark, Sturt, and Brayshaw had a very good ball use in Freo's transition, which I said that Gold Coast struggled to defend. And really, the whole game was fairly uncontested. It was no surprise. Fremantle love to work their way in, and Gold Coast sort of have that fast. And if they can't go, it's funny. It's like if Gold Coast can't go fast, they'll chip the ball around. And if Freo can't go inside the midfield, they'll chip it around. So it's a bit funny how both these teams work. But yeah, as I said, Freo were just, much more prepared with their game plan to defend. Talking about Ruckmans that had a huge game, Sean Darcy, I thought absolutely towed up wits. He had 12 clearances. As you mentioned, one of the people tied up with 12 disposals, tied second for highest of the round. 12 disposals, 17 contested, and 80% efficiency, and a goal. Pretty huge game for him. Brayshaw, fantastic in the stoppages. Young was absolutely fantastic. Brayshaw was good in the stoppage clearances. Young was great in the centre clearances, and both were pretty fantastic in distribution, getting 10 and 12 score involvements respectively. Young, as I mentioned, was fantastic with 88% efficiency as well. Brayshaw was pretty good, but he tends the ball a bit much going inside 50. It's been a bit of a bane for Freo. And I also thought Clark and Wagner had some very good back half ball movement for Freo. In terms of the Gold Coast, honestly, not too many people stood out. Noah Anderson, I thought, was probably the best in terms of their inside midfielder. Honestly, I might actually give the best player, considering how much work he had to do, to Sam Closey, who was sort of playing a more again, like you said, a bit more of a defensive wing. He was sort of on sharp, but he was also doing a lot to generate a lot of intercepts. I think he had, let's see, he had 8 intercepts for the day, 8 ground ball gets, 9 contested possessions, and 4 score involvements. Matty Rao was probably their best inside player, as he had a massive 10 clearances, 10 ground ball gets, 15 contested possessions. But yeah, he struggled to have a lot of clean impact. And honestly, yeah, it was sort of hard because, I don't think structurally Gold Coast defense was set up very well. Like, Alex Sexton, again, like his game last week, and even Sam Collins got a bit of the ball, but just wasn't quite defending well enough. Sam Collins having Tracy, who just sort of walked all over him, let him do what he wanted. I actually thought Tracy, like, again, not big on the stat sheet, but he was in positions where you want him up in the wing, taking good marks.
Yeah, he was.
Got 7. And then also up forward, scored 2 goals, 1. And he's scored a goal every game this season for Freo. And for how, I just want to stress like how important that has been for Freo. Like they've had seasons of like Sonny Walters leading their goal tally possession. I think even one year Hayden Ballantyne won it.
Yeah,
So to have like that tall forward to kick a goal week in, week out, you thought it might have been Jai Amos the way he was going at the start of the season. Obviously, again, he started off fairly well. He's tapered off a bit, especially in conversion, but even like generating marks. So like really important for Fremantle, him being so involved, takes a lot of pressure off Tracy. Like he'll come good. He's just too good of a talent not to.
Absolutely.
But yeah, in terms of Gold Coast, maybe Lukasius up forward, kicked 2 goals. Generally was involved, also distributing inside 50. But as I said, I wasn't too inspired by much of what Gold Coast were doing. It was pretty insipid, really. Like, we've been mentioning that Gold Coast need to get a good away win, but they've just been so far off the pace. And in terms of trying to...
And there've been teams they've come up against where they could absolutely get the win on them, but they just haven't been able to give a decent performance.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think this just comes down to, like, maybe it's a bit like the North Melbourne problem where, you look at those inside midfielders and you always say, oh, wow, fantastic. And then you look at, like, scores from stoppage, scores from centre bounce, and it's like, it's okay. You know what I mean? But, like, not surprisingly, especially if you're not a defensive team like Gold Coast, scoring is what it's all about at the end of the day, and they're just not quite getting enough of it. I also want to say a bit, again, like, you're in danger of being a team like Port. I know I've mentioned them a few times. Probably try not to mention them to you again, but, like, you look at Port's midfield and you go, wow, fantastic. You look at the way Port's midfield defends and you go, ooh.
Yeah, it's a bit iffy.
But, as I said, the way the media is, they just look at stats at the end of the day. There's no possession for running back. But, something that, it's a bit hard to, instill that 1 year as a coach for Dimmer. I think he'll be able to instill that. It's just, a lot of these young players, you got to remember that they've had a few years of maybe some bad habits, getting told that the next generation of players. But you know what I said? It's like that. I don't want to always pin him out, but he's the perfect example for this. Brain Fiorini. He was going to be the next big thing for Gold Coast, but his defensive running was never a big part of his game, and when his development sort of stalled, it was very hard to justify playing him.
Well, that's exactly why they brought on Dimmer, because Dimmer is a very defensive-minded player. Granted, that wasn't how he played back in his playing days. He was very much offensive, very bullish.
Well, I meant he just sort of bored people over, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think it was like, I think it was like almost accidental defending. When your player's on the ground, they're not going to do it much, are they?
No, he was a little bit brutal if you got to watch him play or have seen any of the the
We'll
pods.
call it bullwalking.
Yeah. But when you look at how he ended up coaching Richmond to the whole all their three premierships, it was all about defense. It was all about defensive pressure, whether it's forward, mid, back, and that's what got it. And granted, it caused us to over infringe. That's why we're always at the bottom of the free kick count.
Yeah, exactly.
But we call that our entire game plan was based on pressure and based on turnovers, and that's exactly what he's trying to do with Gold Coast. It's just they have a lot of bad habits about not being able to run both ways that he's trying to coach out of.
Yeah, pretty much. And again, like his first year, you can't expect it. It's again why I thought Gold Coast weren't going to make the 8.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, realistically, it's still impressive what they're able to do. A bit concerning about the chasm, but again, if they've got the system set up, I think they'll be a threat next year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is another example of a game where I don't quite believe in them being there yet.
I just want to hope that the board is actually going to have faith in Dimmer and not just do what they have done in the past.
You gotta. I mean, look, you got 3 or 4 years of stability. I think they can afford Dimmer. If one thing I can say about Gold Coast is they has backed in their coaches for better or for worse. They haven't been trying to juggle around. They've been like, well, we'll try and set up a culture. Obviously, it started horrendously, but there's signs of it getting slightly better as the years go on. But yeah, as I said, in this game, Freo should have really won by a lot more. Not much to say about that, but it's just a tiny bit disappointing, but not the end of the world for Gold Coast.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Sorry, I'm currently looking for the entire sort of coaching line for the Gold Coast Suns. I can't find it specifically. I think their full coaching list is obviously Demmer. I think Alex Rance is up there. Only part-time though. Sean Grigg is up there, who was previously coaching at Geelong. And they've got a couple of existing coaches that have been up there for a while, like Stephen King, Brad Miller, Josh Drummond, who I think was also a former player.
Yeah.
And Tate Kasler, and also Malcheski. I can't remember. Is Reese Malcheski, I think? Oh, no, sorry. Reece Shaw.
It depends. There's a couple.
Reece Shaw is their director of coaching, former North Melbourne coach, just for note. And Nick Malcheski. There we go.
Yeah, Nick Malcheski. A couple of other ones. As I said, honestly, as I said, it's sort of hard, especially when you inherit such a, I don't want to say shambles of a club, but I mean, really, they
still haven't played finals and have always gotten decent, really solid draft picks.
Yeah, but I mean, look, there's a lot of franchises that have come into their respective leagues. Obviously, I'm not just talking about AFL here. They've taken around 10 years to develop and then found some success. It's very hard to implement a team into an established league. So, maybe there's some payoff here. And I do like some of the signs for them. But yeah, as I said,
it's just the hoodoo of not being able to win away from home.
Yeah. Well, I said, it's just not quite there yet. And as a Suns fan, it's sort of just hard to take when it always just feels so close to getting back into finals.
But again, you just have to accept the fact that, it is Dimmer's first season as coach. Miracles aren't going to happen overnight, despite how good your list may be.
Well, at least, without injuries, their list is very good. Still lacking depth, but you expect that.
Yeah. All right. MRO reports to round out this round. Only one. I haven't actually got an update from anything from Sunday's games. I have been checking as we've been going on, but I don't think anything has happened. Patrick Dangerfield, only missing one match for dangerous tackling at Sam Walsh. They are challenging it, and I think their argument might be that Sam Walsh may have forced his own head into the ground, even though both his arms were pinned. I reckon that's probably going to be their argument. I kind of hope that Danger does not get off, just because of the funny thing is happening with Country Round, which is apparently this weekend, and they're using like an inspiration design from him. So if he doesn't get to wear it, it's going to be really funny. Either way, I don't think it's going to matter too much for Geelong. We'll talk about in a minute who they're playing.
Yeah, they have different problems.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just one player makes all the difference. Granted, I thought he did put up at least decent numbers in their game this weekend.
For a return game,
and he is the captain. Like, he is that sort of inspirational character. He does, I think, make a difference in them, especially in their midfield. But
yeah,
it's there's got so many more issues, especially up forward at the moment.
Yeah.
Other news before we go on to ladder and next round. The rising star has been announced, Logan Morris of the Brisbane Lions.
Yeah, Colty for probably a bit of time coming. He's kicked a couple of.
He's only played 7 games and has had some insane performances already.
Yeah, just always a bit of an awkward week for him. I think his best rounds have been coincided in some other clear things. Always hard when you keep forward.
Especially considering he was a player that had that crazy debut and played, 7 quarters of AFL footy after playing after playing in the VFL that same day.
Against the Suns, I think it was.
Yeah, I've got it here. Yeah, it's crazy, but here's an interesting stat. In the 7 games where he hadn't played, the Lions had a 2-5 win-loss record and averaged only 74 points a game. But with him in, has resulted in 5 wins, a draw, and a loss, and an average of 114 points a game, which is crazy how much of an impact he's had.
Forward line consistency, yeah, exactly.
13 goals and 6 goal assists so far in his career. Over the weekend, he kicked 2 goals, 1 goal assist, 6 score involvements from 9 disposals. And yeah, he's clearly flourishing from learning from Charlie Cameron, Eric Kilwood, and Joe Danaher. And, it's good that he has been recognised.
Yeah, it's not a bad mark. I think that's probably one of the best part of his games for a young player, being a pretty good mark inside 50. Pretty decent on the lead up. Obviously, Port were allowing him a bit of space last week, but
obviously,
props to him. I've been pretty happy with his performances in the few Brisbane games that I've watched.
Champion data statistics show that this is the 3rd highest strike rate in the league. Sorry, let me just read the bit before. With just 55 career disposals, Morris has 34 score involvements, including 20 shots at goal, which equates to 61.8% of his possessions finishing in a score. Champion data statistics show this is the 3rd highest strike rate in the league, admittedly from a low volume, but a testament to his impact. And the other top 5 players are Oscar Allen, Joel Amati, Jai Amos, and Ben King. So he's in pretty prestigious company for this season.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you're such a good mark, as I said, like, even if you're not the most imposing disposal, if you get hands on it, you got a free shot. It's as simple as that.
And for the last amount of news to tidy up this round, sadly some bad news for Richmond fans. Tom Lynch will miss 2 weeks with a hamstring strain. I don't know if it was suffered at training or from the game against Hawthorn. It's unlucky because it means, again, we have no forward line and we're back to square one. But, it is what it is. Our season's already kind of a mess. We just have to go with the flow. Again, I don't even think we're going to win against Carlton. I'll talk about that in a minute. But just having no major tall forward just really, really hurts.
Yeah, especially when Lynch sort of looked like, I don't know if he was injured last game. But,
I definitely wasn't 100%, but I don't know.
But, as I said, it's just whether he was, just warming back up or whether he still has some complications. It's just disappointing to see because, there were at least signs that structurally he helped out a bit. But yeah, as I said, sort of hard to fill that void when you got nothing.
Yeah.
You got the void to fill the void.
Just do what we got to do. All right, moving on to the ladder. Top 2 hasn't changed. Sydney and Carlton have solidified top 2 position. Essendon's jumped back up to 3rd, only half a game away from 2nd position, with Collingwood trailing behind them, only a half a game away from them. Freo has moved up to 5th position on 34 points, only half a game away from Collingwood. and the top 4 itself. GWS, Geelong, and Port Adelaide round up the rest of the top 8, all at 32 points. Melbourne, trailing behind, also on 32 points, but purely on percentage. Literally 0.6 is how far away they're from the top 8. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Brisbane round out the top 10 on 30 points, but 122.1 percentage. Pretty much one win will jump them straight into top 5, possibly.
Well, they got the draw, so they're only contending with Freo.
Yeah.
And they'll go over Freo if they win and Freo lose next match.
Well, that also depends on Giants losing, Geelong losing, Port losing, Melbourne losing. But point stands. The Doggies...
No, because they're tied with the draw.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Because it goes... No, but if GWS, Geelong, Port, or Melbourne win, they go to 36. So...
No, I'm just saying they jump Freo.
Ah, yes.
With percentage.
Yeah. Anyway, 11th, 12th, and 13th are the Doggies, the Gold Coast Suns, and Hawthorn, as they've all dropped because Brisbane and Melbourne have jumped up. And then 14th to 18th hasn't moved. St Kilda, Adelaide, West Coast, Richmond, and North Melbourne. With Richmond and North Melbourne only being 0.5 percentage split from each other, apart from Richmond winning one more game than they have. Again, not a good look for Richmond. But, you look at the position we're in, kind of just is what it is.
It's good for the spoon bowl. You always got to have a good, meaningful spoon bowl.
Yeah, but the West Coast North Melbourne spoon bowl just goes better.
Oh, don't know. We haven't had the spoon bowl, have we?
Well, we had the West Coast North Melbourne spoon bowl when Richmond was above West Coast. But we haven't had the Richmond North Melbourne spoon bowl.
Spoon bowl's always 17th, 18th.
No, we haven't played North Melbourne yet. I think it's in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, moving on to the upcoming round. Brisbane and Melbourne Friday night at the Gabba.
Yeah.
This honestly
wouldn't want to.
It's probably going to be a strong Brisbane win, purely based on form. But if Melbourne could cobble up another random bit of luck, they might have a solid chance. They need to play hard shutdown roles on that midfield.
It's hard to back in Melbourne. Again, Brisbane, a team where you can't allow their midfield to do what you want, and Melbourne just really struggling in their midfield without Petrarca.
Mm-hmm.
Oliver obviously having a down game. Brisbane have a few players that can probably tag. What's his name? I think Zach Bailey can sometimes. I think it's another one. But yeah, as I said,
if Melbourne are going to shut down Brisbane, they need to pretty much play strong tagging roles across the field.
Oh yeah, or just generally defensive.
You've got Dunkley, you've got Bailey, you've got Neil, you've got McCluggage.
If Melbourne give Brisbane the inside 50s, they gave North Melbourne. Brisbane are going to rack up 20 goals.
Absolutely.
That's pretty... Yeah. But if they don't, if any team does everything right, they win. So, I just can't see not tipping Brisbane by a huge amount.
Yeah, I'm expecting... If Melbourne are pretty much just going to play how they've played past couple of weeks, I'm expecting Brisbane to be 40-plus points. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, young Melbourne fan listening, but yeah, you're probably just as upset with your own team because it's been hard the last month, I would say. Yeah, but
we're more of an injury front issue. We're not an actual structure thing issue. But
Melbourne?
No, Richmond. Melbourne definitely dealing with structure.
I didn't say Richmond, did I? I meant Melbourne.
You mentioned that we were similar in sort of ways, but not dissimilar. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we'll move on.
Anyway.
North Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium. Blue team against blue team. Doggies, based on form, you pretty much just give them a clear-cut win here. Although, considering how North teams have shown up, they could make it decent, but I don't think it'll be too close.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very young-bodied midfield up against a pretty senior and fleshed-out midfield. Their best area, of North, I'm giving to a loss versus the Bulldogs. So, I I can imagine it being like a nice, higher scoring shootout and competitiveness.
But you'd
So,
give the Doggies a clear-cut win here, for sure.
yeah, I mean, they might lose less than I think Brisbane's going to beat Melbourne by. Like, maybe. I don't know. I haven't thought about that
What would
hard.
be really interesting if North could keep the Doggies under 100? I don't think it'll happen, but that would make it an
they could do
interesting
that.
game.
I would give them a figurative medal. We'll give them the coast to coast keeping a team under 100 award.
Might have to get that made up just to give them something.
I'm sure it will go in the cabinets of Arden Street.
I mean, it's a fair point though. It's like if you can, despite the issues that you've had over the season, you're starting to keep teams under 100. If you can keep that up, it's positive signs, regardless if it's a win.
Yeah, and as I said, I mean, even if they don't, like, if it's just consistency, like if it's one where they're like, it's not a run of goals they're conceding, it's just the way that the match is being played. Or, as I said, if their midfield just randomly bowls up and, the Dogs generate 70 inside 50s, it'll be like, yeah, well. But yeah, you definitely do want to see at least a, performance effort from the back line as it's been lifting.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's going to be really hard.
I don't really see him containing, but yeah, man,
it's going to be pretty hard to stop the Doggies midfield.
Yeah.
Especially Bonds. Bonds from putting up monster performances.
We'll give him the name of 90.
Yeah.
If they keep the Bulldogs under 90, they'll have really won.
Yeah, that's like a mentality win rather than a physicality win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, probably another clear-cut win off the board. Sydney and Fremantle at the SCG. You can't just not give it to Sydney here.
Yeah, is this another double up? I feel like we've had Fremantle at Optus versus Sydney. Yeah, that's right. This one, Fremantle. Yeah, Fremantle were actually fairly in it. They just kicked so many behinds it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
Honestly, the matchup isn't actually as bad. As I said, it's just that, because Sydney lock out a lot of outside movement, whereas Fremantle, try and work the ball back inside. So, they might, the way they play, it might actually generate a bit more towards Freo. I think Fremantle didn't have Darcy the last time they played Sydney, so maybe that's an advantage. But
it was fairly early in the season, so possibly.
Yeah, at the SCG, you're going to tip Sydney, but, if games against Sydney that might be under 20 points, this could be it, especially at home.
I mean, Freo are in decent form as well. They have majority of their key players in. They're only missing, 2 or 3.
Give them a half chance.
So
I don't really believe Fremantle's, a huge threat in terms of, No,
especially when they're still fairly iffy playing away from home as well.
Yeah, and I think just, again, their depth, as I said, they require a lot of their key players performing, bit iffy in the forward line, but, we'll see how they go.
Yeah.
Again, if you want a freak tip, you might take Fremantle, but, definitely I think it's a 70-30 to Sydney, maybe a bit more.
It's definitely more. Just based on form alone, it's definitely more, but...
Yeah, I don't know.
Could be a sneaky chance. All right, Gold Coast Suns and Collingwood up on the Gold Coast.
Very interesting game, actually.
Yeah, Suns, somewhat decent form. Still can't win away from home, but can win at home. Collingwood, still missing a couple of injuries, but have finally found some decent form themselves.
It might rip open a paradox in the universe. If it's a one-possession game, with Gold Coast at home, it's does Collingwood winning every close game kick into effect, or does Gold Coast winning every home game kick in?
Yeah, who knows?
Battle of superstition. But honestly, I think Collingwood should win.
I agree. Just based on I think form alone at the moment. Granted, they are coming off a bye, but
yeah, and ins and outs might be interesting again. Seeing here they get back, but again, as we were mentioning, a lot of their players that they've brought in due to injury have been playing really well. Be interesting to see if they'll keep up their form as, they play a team that's, still figuring out things. Obviously Gold Coast made a lot of omissions from the list that played Fremantle this week and still couldn't quite get it. So it'll be interesting to see which players they bring back in, which players they, decide maybe to persist with a bit more. But yeah, I think Collingwood just look a bit more set and, a well-structured top 4 team decided to go past them.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. Adelaide and the GWS Giants at the Adelaide Oval.
Yeah.
Again, another kind of weird game.
Yeah. GWS isn't in the best of form, and
Adelaide still don't really have much of a forward line.
I mean, I'll say it's their midfield more, but again, if one affects the other, clearly. Yeah, but GWS again, their few problems is they generate a lot with their midfield, so that's a pretty big avenue for them. It'll be interesting seeing if they persist with Strawn or they bring back Riley O'Brien. He spent a couple of weeks in the reserve up against Kieran Briggs. I would probably want to bring back O'Brien.
Yeah, you'd want to bring back an experienced ruck against Kieran Briggs.
Exactly. It didn't really look like Strawn could maybe run out games quite yet, so I would say you probably should, but who knows. Yeah, again, maybe Phil Ford?
I don't know when Phil Ford's back. I genuinely haven't checked.
I think we said around near the bye, so yeah, interested to see that. The only thing I will say is if GWS cough up inside 50, Adelaide's defence is still okay. But I just think this might be an ugly match where GWS just sort of out-muscle Adelaide, just with amount of entries. But who knows? If Adelaide can get a bit of run on, I reckon they could outpace GWS. It just really depends on what type of game it rocks up being. Which I'm basically saying either GWS win shallow in a crap game or Adelaide just flog GWS.
Yeah.
With current form.
All right.
I don't know which is going to happen.
Honestly, I'm probably going to go GWS as well, but it really is a coin flip kind of game.
Yeah, which is insane considering Adelaide's technically a bottom 4 team, but I don't know.
Yeah, it could go anywhere. All right, let's move on to a slightly more interesting game. Geelong and Essendon at the MCG.
Yeah.
Based on form alone, I'd probably go the Bombers, but it's also the MCG is a much bigger ground than Marvel, where most of the Bombers games and wins have kind of come from.
Yeah, but Geelong can also not defend one-on-one, so a lot of space.
Also true.
With Essendon, a few of their key forwards getting a bit into it, being of course 2 meter Peter and Cole Langford. They've just kicked a couple of goals the last 2 weeks, but they've still been in the games. Stringer finding a bit of form's really good. It's just interesting to see how Geelong will defend. Zach Merritt, I can imagine going off the chain. Be interesting to see if they do a little job on Stewart, because I don't really think. Well, in terms of forward,
most of the games since Stewart's been back, he's kind of been shut down pretty hard.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if Essendon would play someone like that, maybe like a Setterfield or something like that. Maybe pop him forward.
Maybe.
Who knows? But yeah, there's a lot of things Essendon can do. What Geelong need to do is score. Obviously, again, I don't think Essendon's defense is that woeful as I said at the start of the season.
I think Geelong need better defensive chains to try and score from, because the inside 50s that they're currently getting, they're not converting from. So if they have better defensive structure, they might actually be able to get something going.
Exactly. But yeah, as I said, I think Geelong need a lot more to fix. That's why I'm tipping Essendon. Especially after that rant about telling you to respect them a bit more. I think I got to back Essendon in from here.
But, I'm probably going to back Essendon in on this one just based on form alone.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
What about form?
Starting the Sunday games, St Kilda and Port Adelaide at Marvel Stadium. A team that I really struggle to tip. Purely because I don't like how they look, and then another team who just looks terrible at the moment, and you don't know if you should
Port have mainly done well against bottom teams. Like, that's like the one good thing. It's not like Port are 3-7 at the moment, or
No, like
however
they're in the
many
8
from on
because
the.
they've
Yeah,
actually been able to
exactly.
perform against lower ranked teams. But
Yeah, that's not their problem. It's just like how bad that they've looked.
yeah,
I'll say mainly the last 2 games. I'll still defend the Carlton game. But obviously, I think it's just the bad optics of, again, Port losing, trying to make their position in the 8, 2 games at home, really could have had a win. And this game just becomes a non-negotiable. If they win, it's real. If they lose, it's real alarms for them. But yeah, as I said, in terms of pure structure, trying to put a bit of logic into this and not just unadulterated, disappointing emotion.
yeah.
I think, the ways that you go to win, basically, it's not surprising. They just need to grind. Port, pretty poor with their entries since like 50. St Kilda, able to defend. It's just, both teams like kicking the ball from their back half forward without much thought. So there'll be like a lot of high press turnovers. So if St Kilda convert off their scores off turnovers, especially off the back half, they might be in with a chance. Whereas Port, they just got to see if they can outmuscle, especially in the midfield where St Kilda aren't that polished. They can get a lot of scores from the centre, where they do pretty well. Maybe lift a bit more in general stoppages. They might hopefully get back on the winners list.
Well, fingers crossed, but you never know what could happen in that one. Again, it's another coin flip game.
You would probably
quite a few of them.
You wouldn't mind seeing Port lose.
Yeah. I mean, based on form alone, they probably shouldn't be in the 8. And I would like to see St Kilda win just because they are my second team, but also it's hard to kind of trust them. Again, it's just their inconsistency. I want to have faith,
and we mentioned
but I'm
last
also
week,
like,
remember?
I don't know.
Yeah, like that's the other interesting thing is they did play aggressively better defensively worse against Brisbane. So it'll be interesting to see the style of play that comes out. Like, will they continue that? Because we mentioned they scored over 100 points against Brisbane. Very rare for St Kilda to do that. So we'll see if they continue a bit of offensive improvement for defensive sacrifice. Again, I don't think Port's the team you want to do that to. It's a pretty dangerous game.
Yeah.
Letting Port do what they want, they will cream teams.
Yeah, it's just, provided they have the right structure to be able to do that, because that's, again, that and their inconsistency up forward is what's kind of hampering them.
Yeah. So we'll see.
All right. Another clear-cut game this week. Richmond and Carlton at the MCG. I will be at this game. I'm expecting to lose. Yep. Carlton will just wipe the floor with us because we don't have a forward line. We don't have a back line. We barely have a midfield. So,
I'll pin this down as a game where Charlie Conroy might go a bit further in the Coleman.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he kicks 10 against us. Like, give him the Coleman at that point, but...
I'll give him 6.
Yeah, I could see 6. I don't know who's going to line up. Probably Bolter's probably going to line up on him. But that'll leave Mackay. That'll leave Mackay free because we don't have another tall down there. Oh, we have Miller. Actually, Miller might go on Mackay. I don't know. Either way, Carlton are going to win. I just don't expect it to be close.
Yeah, like honestly, any point of Richmond being in the contest is really just conjecture.
Well,
again, even at their best, I don't think their midfield's better than Carlton's.
Both teams are strong, fast-starting teams. So it's gonna the first half is gonna be where the big battle is, and then we're end up just gonna run out of legs, and they're just gonna walk all over us.
Probably. That being said, is like especially with the rivalry, I'm hoping Richmond might put an effort. It's just like I think the best outcome is like maybe 3/4 of a good game and then a fade out late.
Yeah, we're able to play up to really good teams. We just can't run out games. And granted, it doesn't mean that we're in front at the end of each quarter. Granted, in some of those close games we have been, but like as long as we're able to at least try and at least keep up for at least 3/4 of the game, I'll be happy with that.
Especially since conversion gets a lot harder with your forward line the way it is.
Yeah, exactly. Like we just do what we can. As long as we're able to at least try and keep up and show that there is some promise leading up to, what we want in the next couple of seasons, I'll be happy with where we are.
Yeah.
And then to round out the round upcoming is the Battle of the Birds with the West Coast Eagles and Hawthorn at Optus Stadium. West Coast, game at home.
This is gonna be hard.
They finally have their forward line all back together. Hawthorn in really good form. However, they've just come off a bye. They have shown to be able to play away from home, thankfully, which has been really, really good for them. Whether they're able to keep that sort of momentum coming off of the bye remains to be seen. I think it could be a really close game.
Yeah, I think this actually might be the opposite of GW versus LA, where I think like the closest result is like the high scoring option. Otherwise,
especially if it's not a wet weather game.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about the weather forecast, but I don't think it's forecast to rain late in the week. But again, it's that midfield matchup where as West Coast, as we know, go hyper aggressive. But as I said, that can lead to score going the other way. But again, like against Hawthorn, who's a bit more transition based, working hard to get the ball on the outside contest. It really depends how much they're able to generate from that. And if West Coast can get the ball forward, they've got a few threats down there. But again, they will have to convert because Hawthorn going the other way is going to be pretty dangerous.
Absolutely.
But again, Hawthorn's still got to be smart getting it in. It's not like West Coast defenses is anything to scoff at. But again, can be outmuscled by just numerous entries.
Absolutely. Like the battle between Will Day and Elliot Yeo is going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah. Look, let's put it this way. I expect Hawthorn to score about 80 to 90 points. It's just whether West Coast will be around that at the end of the game or not.
Honestly, if it's an under 100-point game, I'd be very surprised. Like for
for both teams?
Yeah, for both teams.
Or if one team doesn't score, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, if I'm expecting either team to score 100, it'd probably be Hawthorn. But
yeah,
like if both teams stay under 100 points, it shows that it's a really strong defensive midfield sort of game.
Yeah. No, I said.
Like, and Harley Reid should be back as well, right?
Yeah, I thought it was back last week, but I think I forgot about the bye.
It was a bye plus 2 week suspension.
Yeah.
So I think he's back this week. So, maybe it'll be Harley Reid versus Will Day, which could be an even more interesting battle.
In terms of like people so important for their own team, it would be like pretty massive.
Yeah, because
probably not likely to go head to head, but
but like statistics wise, it's going to be really, really interesting to watch.
In terms of theatre, So I said that should be good, and especially when we're talking about two teams on the lower end of the ladder, is sort of the exciting matchup that you sort of want, Yeah,
absolutely. I reckon this would be a really good game to watch in person as well, just because of how interesting both teams currently are.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're in Perth and have nothing to do on Sunday, go down to Optus and take a look. All right. To round out this week's podcast, we're going to do the AFL Footy Fan Survey that they released a couple of weeks ago. I have not had a look at this at all, so I have no idea what's in store. I know you've already gone through it.
Yeah, it's about 5 or 6 questions, I think.
All right. So, first question, who is the best player in the AFL right now? Do we just base it on current season? Do we base it on past couple of seasons? What was your criteria for it?
I just went this season, so I went Bontempelli.
I think I did kind of talk about this earlier, but I'm tossing up between either the Bont, Patrick Cripps, Golden or Heaney. I think Neil has had a solid season, but he was very quiet early on. Jacob Weitering has only been good since he came back from injury, so I don't really want to count that. Sam Taylor is currently out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, exactly.
And he also missed 2 or 3 weeks with that bad concussion. Chad Warner has also had a really, really good season. I think he's had really solid performances throughout the midfield. Again, Max Gawn, one of the best ruckmen of the current era, also had a decent season, but has been very kept quiet in some performances. De Goey has been injured half the season. Dacos is Dacos. Kerno, goal scoring machine. That's why he's leading the Coleman. But I think Butters, again, really strong midfield role, has always been pretty good. But I don't. I think he has dipped a few games.
I think
same with Jezza. I don't think Jezza should be here, to be honest. He's had a pretty poor year.
I don't want to say anything, but there's a bit of big bias. Like the fact that Sarong doesn't even make the.
I agree that Sarong should be here. Absolutely.
Like I wouldn't pick him, but like in terms of some of these players,
Sarong and Young, I think should be on this list. To be honest,
hell, I would even put Yo up there.
Absolutely. I mean? Yeah, but Yo also missed half the season as well. Oh, not half the season. He missed a fair few games, so.
Just a couple.
Anyway, even Matt Rowell should honestly be on here.
Yeah, Rowley too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, even yeah.
I think I'm going to go Cripps. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
All right. Which of these players who are all 21 years and under will be the best player in 5 years? This is a tough list.
Yeah.
Jai Amos, Will Ashcroft, Nick Dacos, Sam Darcy, Jason Horne-Francis, Josh Rochelle, Harley Reid, Harry Sheasel, Isaiah Wanganeen Millera, and George Wardlaw. That's a stacked list.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, like, in terms of best player in 5 years, like, well, do you do it like AFL media player best or like best is in highest impact? Because, like,
you'd probably go high. Well, I think the question would be more aimed towards highest impact. And
yeah, because if you do that,
you'd either put that towards a row-ended midfielder or you put it towards the only ruck on the list, which is Sam Darcy.
Yeah. Honestly, I think Amos could, but, like, that's a bit of a prospect one.
Because, like, you look at this list and, like, they're all either midfielders or halfback. Halfback
yeah,
players.
Exactly.
And whereas Sam Darcy is the only ruck, Jai Amos is the only key forward. So it's like...
Yeah. It's like... You pick Nick Dacos if you're just going, oh yeah, like he's going to rack up 40 possessions in, you know, for a decent amount of his prime. But if you're talking about players like impact per team, feels a need, obviously I think the big three, Harley Reid, Jason Hall-Francis, and George Wardlaw.
Yeah.
Maybe Wanganeen Millera, just in terms of like, what St Kilda need, but it's obviously hard when St Kilda play a pretty game.
Honestly, I keep looking at Darcy. I'm going to be honest. I think the ruck role is just that important, and if he's going to be the number one ruck for Freo for the most part, I think he could, especially as he keeps developing, he could absolutely dominate teams in the middle.
Again, I say it's like a bit of a prospect, like Jai Amos is like, yeah, I don't think he's going to play too many 20-game seasons. But
the impact that he could have,
yeah.
That's kind of where I'm leading. Otherwise, it's definitely going to be like Reid or Sheasel for me, I think.
Yeah, well, as I said,
and I'm already pretty high on Sheasel. I've really liked what he's done since joining the AFL.
I think Wardlaw is more important than Sheasel. In terms of North Melbourne's development.
Well,
but
Wardlaw is more of an on-baller, to be fair.
Yeah. I don't know. Sheasel is very... Yeah, again, it's just like, what do you rate exactly? So, yeah, as I said. But, you know, again, if you're, like, going off that, I think Nick Dacos beat someone like Sheasel in terms of, like, pure comparison.
That's kind of a given at this point in time.
Yeah. So, as I said, like, if I was going to pick Sheasel, I'd just pick Nick Dacos. Whereas I could see George Wardlaw being more important for North than Nick Dacos is for Collingwood, which is insane because Nick Dacos is so good. But
I think despite all of this, I'm just going to go Sam Darcy.
Yeah, I think I just picked Dacos.
Best coach in the AFL. If I'm going to be biased, I'm going to say Uze, but I think Horse is kind of the only option, really. Horse or Voss.
You can't. Like, if it's this year, it has to be. Like, Horse, you know, he's so old, he's reliable.
They're 3 games off second place. They're only lost
it's a different
one
style.
game.
It's not like he's going back to the well. Like, he's sort of reinvented a list. I thought a while back, Horse was going to step aside because obviously with the new players sort of coming through, like it may have brought in some new coaching philosophies that might need to come in, keep it fresh. But he's just been able to provide it himself. So honestly, I really rate that. I think by far,
I think I'll have to go horse. Nothing. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, for 20th...
but we should talk about, others. Like Sam
Mitchell, I agree, has had a really good season this year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put Dimmer up there purely just because he got gifted a pretty solid list and he's still trying to figure out what to do with it.
I don't know.
Brad Scott. I'd put Brad Scott maybe up there just because of Essendon currently being top 3.
Again, I don't think, it's not Essendon will be world beaters, but it's the development you want from that list.
As much as I hate Collingwood, I put Fly up there as well because I do really like what he does. I think
especially he's after struggling at the start, bringing him back together.
Absolutely. So. Actually, I can actually just straight up go back. Granted, Freo's, they have a little bit of inconsistency, but I think Justin Longmuir has done really well with the list that he has at the moment. Again, the game last week.
I wouldn't quite put him in that caliber, but I could see why you would say that.
I think he wouldn't be super high on the list, but he's up there to where he can get the most out of his players. It's whether the players want to actually prove that to him.
Yeah, I know what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Adam Kingsley as well. Former Richmond assistant coach. I put him up there. He's done really well with GWS.
Yeah. Struggles recently, but still a young side.
Yeah,
overall, big team.
And Bevo would probably be in the same boat. Struggles.
Oh,
yeah, but granted, Bevo has had a lot of heat on his back in regards to
interesting
issues.
It depends what you want to take out of Bevo and how much you think you can assess coaching from the outside.
Yeah, it's are the players
doing okay?
Are the players playing for their future or are they playing for their coach? It's kind of the outlook you got to kind of have. If they're playing for
how much of it is the individual talent of the list versus how much is coach.
Well, he has moved some players around and to great effect, like Ed Richards, for an example.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say he's versatile enough. I would say some of it's been a bit superfluous, but again, I'm not going to say it's been awful. I think it's been a bit hardly knocked this year, but I could also see him moving on sometime in the next couple of years.
Yeah. If I do want to talk a little bit highly about Uz. I do think, despite all of our injuries, I think he's done really well with what we have. We've put up solid performances against decent teams, just can't run out games. Sometimes we don't really have a plan B, and I think that's also kind of due to personnel issues. Again, we barely have a list as it is.
So. I would honestly say, of the bottom 4 teams, I'd say Richmond are the best coach, considering Adelaide's there.
Yeah, well, Adelaide have had a lot more downs than ups, and that's because of the fact that where they were last year, they should have made the 8 last year. They should have stayed in the 8
again,
last
year. Given the context, but purely off this year, like I said, Adelaide's coached worse than I think Richmond has been.
Absolutely, and then
I could see how Richmond might want to play once they get all their players back.
Yeah, I think what Uz wants to try and reach with their players is a similar style to what Dimmer had in trained with us, but a lot more stoppage based rather than fast pressure, high turnover sort of game.
Even just ground ball gets, they're very hard once the ball hits the deck.
Yeah, it's a statistic that I've been very happy to see us get better in because it's one thing that we haven't always been strong in. But we're just going to go horse for coaches for very obvious reasons. If a 20th AFL/AFLW club was to be introduced after Tasmania, where should it be based? Personally, Northern Territory would be my go. Just because that way the whole country is kind of covered, which would be very nice to see. But just based on what numbers we have and what we've seen kind of around the sort of state leagues, I think Adelaide's probably going to be the next best option. Yeah, because you can't get a second team in Tasmania. No way, it's too small. No, you can't go Hobart and Launceston. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
and if
yeah, it's a,
and I know Snap's been talking
no,
about this a lot in the survey. If they're gonna actually build a second AFL stadium in Adelaide, why not get a third team in there? Why not keep developing that state? It's already an AFL state as it is. You're not going to get much more out of Queensland and New South Wales, I'll be honest.
I just think Western Australia makes more sense because it's more spread out. Like there is a logistical reason to have another team there.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Adelaide, I do agree. If you're going to get a 20th team,
do you want
somewhere,
to put it more in the countryside? I don't know. I don't exactly know the numbers of how much residency is in the outer suburbs of Adelaide, but
if you're going to get a 20th team somewhere, it's going to be one of those three options: WA, South Australia, or the Northern Territory.
Yeah, Northern Territory is more just like, I think people want to see it there. I'm not sure logistically it works.
Logistically, I have no idea. Like, if it's going to work, it'd probably be in Cairns.
But yeah.
That's where I'm going to go.
Oh, I'm not that opposed to not having a 20th team and just getting rid of a Melbourne team.
I'd prefer to have it.
Ruthless,
I just want even numbers. Odd numbers, I feel like just doesn't really work.
Yeah.
All right. Should the AFL introduce a send-off rule?
No. I don't think so. Absolutely not. The AFL can barely organise reviews. I can't see them managing a send-off rule.
Yeah, I definitely don't think. I don't think they need more rules on top of rules. I do think, especially for concussions, I feel like there should be something there because a player, especially going out early in the game to concussion, is pretty nuts, or a really bad injury.
Yeah,
isn't helpful. Honestly, and is a massive hindrance.
Something I'll bring up with a question that's coming up that could be interesting. That might play into it, but yeah.
I think for now I'm just going to go no because it's just too many rules to balance at the moment anyway. But I think something should be there to kind of counteract the whole, especially early in the game. If it's late in the game, I feel like it shouldn't matter too much. But if it's super early in the game, then I feel like there should be something there. But I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's something that needs to sort of hash out. What should the sub rule be? I'm fine with it as it is.
Okay.
I definitely do like the change that it can be used tactically rather than just based on injury. Granted, you need to know when you're going to use it because again, there have been times where a team has used the tactical sub early and then they've had a bunch of injuries and it's really hindered them.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know, but you could do that with 5 on the bench. You just leave it up to the coaches because if you're going to have limited interchange, you just...
Yeah, but if you have 5 on the bench, they're going to lower the interchange rotation number is the issue.
Or even if you keep it the same, as I said, you can't just cycle through 5 players, otherwise you're just going to run out in the third quarter. So if you have 5 on the bench, someone's going to have limited game time, but not have to be hampered with specifics.
And granted, that could always be like, a veteran player in their twilight years, body can't keep up, but still wants to play, that sort of thing. They're kind of using the sub for that sort of option anyway at the moment.
Yeah. And look, as I said, if you want to get really wacky, you could even say, something with concussion, you might, if someone goes out concussed, you could maybe increase the amount of interchanges they get in compensation. I think that would be pretty unnecessary, but you could. But yeah, I'm definitely in favor of 5 on the bench. But even 4, I just don't like the sub.
You've convinced me. 5 on the bench will do. What do you think of the current length of games, 4 times 20 quarter minutes plus time on? I made a point about this a couple weeks back. That I think because of how many injuries teams are dealing with this season, I think my issue is either the season's too long, which it is. As much as we love the AFL, we love the sport, and we love watching more of it, it's too long, especially for the players. Yeah. But also,
even in terms of venues as well, it's a very long period of time to devote to getting to games, especially families as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're essentially devoting half a day to going to the football, and I know half an hour doesn't make a lot of difference, but in the long term, as I said, when you give it to player health as well, I wouldn't mind it snipping off a few minutes. In terms of watching product, I don't actually mind it. I know that's just because they've got nothing better to do.
I have no issues with the actual game lengths being as they are.
Yeah.
But again, I think the round's too long. Adding a 19th team is definitely not going to help.
Yeah, exactly.
But again,
I think if they got
it's like
I think if they got 20 teams, they should aim for a 22 round season.
We're having exactly. I agree. But we're having a massive injury epidemic, and we've had that the past couple of seasons because the season's just too long and players' bodies can't handle it. Like young players, older players, it's across the board, and that's a major issue. So either my suggestion is either shorten the quarters again, like maybe only just take off 2 minutes plus time on, so 18 minutes plus time on. I don't think it'll make that much of a difference, or actually shorten the season length.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and just remember, you're clicking too long when you say that.
Yeah, obviously I'm clicking too long.
It confused me. I think I might have actually clicked too short by accident, but.
Should the AFL introduce extra time for drawn games in the home race season? No. That should only be... I'm straight up no. That should only be kept to finals. I have no issues with the draw during the home and away season.
Again, too long as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you imagine? Especially if you have kids and it goes into overtime and you're trying to convince the kids to go to bed.
No, you definitely... It should only be reserved for finals. Because they're the games that actually matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Has the score review and the use of technology improved the game?
It's technically yes.
Technically a yes, but the system could still use a lot of work.
Yeah. This is a very disingenuous
can we get some 4K cameras into the goalposts, please?
Please. They spent too much money on AFLX so many years ago.
Yeah, they did, actually. And that's what's biting them in the ass.
That was $1 billion. Ooh.
Technically, yes. But the equipment in use definitely still needs to be improved. The snicked, like the little microphone thing that they use in the goalpost, I think is great.
Yeah.
Because that actually works. It does what the system wants it to do. But it's the cameras themselves that need to be higher quality to be able to actually pinpoint those sort of specific moments. Or even try and get the use of augmented reality stuff like the cricket users, like soccer users.
Yeah.
To be able to just better analyze that sort of thing.
But and get it quick as well.
Absolutely. Is footy better to watch than 10 years ago?
Again, this is a bit of a hard question.
Yeah, because the game has changed so much is the issue.
Especially since 2014 was a bit of a pivot year between closer to football. I say 2018 was a bit more where you see turnover based free flowing football. 20
because the late 2010s is when the Richmond game style of high pressure turnover games started to take shape, and other teams started to copy that as well.
And bottom teams started getting a bit closer, especially early 2010s. It was still a lot of teams were getting thrashed week in, week out. There was still the flood era of football.
Sydney were very big culprits of that one.
Yeah, Sydney, Hawthorn, but even before that, St Kilda, Geelong, even the Western Bulldogs. So, specifically 10 years ago, yeah, no doubt. But
maybe if it's 5 years ago, debatable sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because I just think 10 years ago was a very awkward time for football.
Yeah.
Despite being some good matches. This was Port coming good, so I'm fond of that era, but.
Do you support a wildcard system for finals, i.e. 7 to be 10th and 8 to be 9th for final 2 spots in the top 8? I'm 50-50 on this one. I did kind of make an argument in the Discord server about it. I think that can be some sort of wildcard system, but it has to be very, very specific sort of situation it can be used.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it should only be based on percentage as to whether it kind of works.
I don't know. I just think there's just...
It's also the fact that it doesn't really work for the current amount of teams. If we go to 20 teams, I think it could be viable.
Yeah, but if you've got 7th being West Coast, you're gonna make them. Oh, I guess they'll have the home game, but you know what I mean. It's an extra game for them. They've already got to do more.
7th and 8th would get home games for this.
It just makes it a bit more Vic centric, I think.
Yeah.
And then, as for me, I can't stand that. So, Yeah.
Look, I love my
but like it's not in a very direct way.
I love my Vic
And that's the
bias,
AFL
but I
money.
also hate half of the Victorian teams. This purely based on rivalry.
Yeah.
But it's like I can see a system where it can work, but I don't think right now is it
Mm,
is when we need it. Maybe later down the line, again, 20 teams,
mm,
like maybe the whole system of how the season is structured is changed, and
mm.
maybe then something like this could be brought in, but definitely not right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So no. What is your favorite time slot to attend games? Whenever it's a big marquee game would be nice. I do actually quite like Friday nights. I like Thursday nights. I do also like, but also having to work on the Friday just sucks.
Mm,
So preferably Friday night. I like Saturday twilight over Saturday night specifically.
yeah.
And I also quite like Sunday twilight. Not that that really happens all that often in
Yeah.
Melbourne.
I mean, honestly, I'm a Saturday afternoon fan just because I don't know what to do after the football. You know what I mean? I'm not really a going out person, so I
Yes,
like the afternoon. You can
Saturday
just decide
twilight,
whether you want to.
Sunday twilight gives me time in my mornings if I get out of bed early
Mm,
enough to do stuff like whether it's clean the apartment, go food shopping, that sort of thing. Then I can go
yeah,
into the footy where it's like a 3:40, 4:40 sort of game. Go to the game,
I
have
think,
dinner
yeah,
afterwards,
but I think
that
also
sort of thing.
Saturday afternoon, and Saturday twilight are pretty much almost the same.
Well, Saturday
It's just
afternoon
like
is usually
slightly
like
different
a
in the.
like a week 1
No,
o'clock,
I'm
two
just saying
o'clock
like
sort of start.
WA Saturday afternoon is actually very similar
Oh
to
yeah,
East Coast
yeah,
Saturday
that's
twilight.
very true. I'm gonna go Saturday twilight for that one.
I
What
went Saturday
time should the
afternoon, but
AFL Grand Final be played? Afternoon. I did like what they did with the twilight and the night, but I think
mm,
just traditional is fine. I have no issues with it.
yeah,
Do you enjoy Gather
exactly.
Round? Um, eh, I think it should be. I think it should be uh, celebrated across the country, not just in South Australia. I know that they now have a
Yeah,
contract in for it, but
exactly. I mean, purely on the question,
purely on
I
the
like
question,
Gather
I
Round.
think I like it. It's definitely a big
Yeah,
thing for the game. Uh, Drives in a lot of tourism to
yeah,
South Australia. Sorry,
Australia.
um,
Yeah,
and again like it. This sort of thing does actually encourage them to build that second stadium that they want, and maybe even get in
mm,
that third team that they're interested in. That sort of thing. Like, so it's not
yeah,
definitely not
absolutely.
a bad thing by any stretch.
No, it's just in terms of figuring out with the fixture, making it fair.
All right, here we go. Did you enjoy opening round? No. Opening
No.
round has a lot of issues. Do I think
Mm,
it can work to help promote the game in the other states,
yeah.
especially New South Wales and Queensland? Absolutely. Is it?
Well, there's the thing. It's like,
Is it?
why don't you enjoy opening round? Like, it's not that I'm against people going to New South Wales and Queensland.
No, because it's good
Like,
to it's good to build the
if
game
that
in
what,
those states.
yeah, like if you said if that was like another version of Gather Round, absolutely fine with it.
Yeah,
Splitting the first round? Hell no.
yeah. Especially, and it's unfair to the other teams as well.
Hmm.
Like, granted, I think in the long run it hasn't actually mattered too much. Um, Especially now that
It's been a
we've
bit with
reached middle of
fixture
the season.
quirks,
But yeah, it's
you
made the whole
know.
fixture weird, and
Hmm.
if they can work it out in a way that actually benefits every team, then yeah, all for it. Even if you actually send all 18 teams up to New South Wales and Queensland and play like four
Yeah,
games in New South Wales, 5 games in Queensland, something like that, then
yeah,
yeah, it could work like that. But otherwise, at the moment, no.
absolutely.
Do you like the floating fixture where dates for round 16 to 24 are not confirmed until during the season? No, but I do kind of get why it still is the way that it is.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, honestly, I don't mind it, but yeah, as I said, it is annoying if you like want to travel to a specific state
yeah,
or,
exactly. Like
you
I've
know,
I've already mentioned this to you outside of the podcast, but I'm probably going to go up to Brisbane for Brisbane v GWS
yeah.
in like less than 2 months. It's like round 22, I
Hmm.
think. But like I had no idea what the date for that was actually going to be until
Yeah.
only a couple of weeks ago. But like, I get why it's still a floating fixture.
Exactly.
It'd be nice if we had a bit more information like closer to the start of the season, rather than in the middle. Should each player's salary be made public? No, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't need to know.
Do you support the introduction of mid-season trading? Yes, but with restrictions. I think there is.
Honestly, I don't think it needs it.
I don't think it needs to be a thing now.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, yeah, figure out what Tassie's doing, how that's going to affect the draft, especially for the other teams. And then maybe introduce something like this. But for now, it definitely isn't needed.
No. Again, I don't trust teams in the middle of the season.
That too.
I think there's a lot of teams that you think are like out of it and that probably would sell the farm. And especially when you see these bum teams where like the back half you can build up a bit of consistency. But if you get too much pressure on the board, they're just gonna do stupid things.
Yeah.
It just makes the good teams better.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, imagine Sydney like doing some insane sort of draft mid-season pick selections.
It's probably more likely Collingwood, but yeah, I get your point.
Should clubs be allowed to trade draft picks multiple years in advance? I mean, I know multiple clubs actually want this, so I don't really have much of an issue. But I don't.
Yeah, I don't trust them as well. I don't think so.
Who's your favorite play-by-play commentator? Hutto is my favorite.
Yeah,
I'm a big Hutto fan.
Honestly, yeah, I do think Papelia is very underrated.
I agree as well. He normally does the WA games, right?
Yeah, so we get a lot of him.
I like Papelia. I like Dwayne Russell. I have no issues with Dwayne. I don't mind Mark Howard.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think Hutto.
Yeah, Howard's just like, if it's a game where you don't really care about either team, like you take a Hutto. Oh, Howard.
But yeah, I think Mark Howard's usually pretty good more on the radio side of things rather than TV commentary.
Yeah.
So, but I think in terms of
I thought you said Howard instead of Hudson for a second.
No, I'm definitely going Anthony Hudson. I love the way that he commentates the game.
Yeah, I was going to say Mark Howard's definitely in that neutral. I respect him being able to be such a solid commentator for all formats, but he's no one to get excited about. You know what I mean?
Who is your favorite expert commentator on TV? Luke Hodge, Matthew Richardson, Joel Selwood, Trent Cotchin, Joe Watson, Daisy Thomas, Jason Dunstall, David King, Jonathan Brown. This is the big list. Gary Lyon, Nathan Buckley, Jack Rewalt, Lee Montagna, Brad Johnson, Jared Healy, Eddie Betts, Jordan Lewis, or Dermot Brereton. If I'm going to go a bit of bias, I'd go Jack Rewalt. Not just because he's new to the commentary, but I think he has the most recent better experience as to how the game is currently played.
Yeah.
Whereas pretty much everyone on this list, apart from Cochin and Selwood, have been out of the game a few years or decades.
Yeah, I get you there.
Honestly, if it's in terms of based on experience, I'd probably go Dunstall.
Yeah.
Granted, I do watch a lot more Fox Footy commentator games and Channel 7 commentator games.
Yeah. Like, it's weird. There's a lot of people here I don't like. But I know it's a controversial opinion. I don't mind Demi. Like, he's so weird. Like, I mean, he will say a couple of, like, concussion-based comments. And he does get a bit silly when it's, like, judging MRA stuff, but he's actually very progressive the way he analyzes games.
No, I definitely agree. He definitely has a really solid understanding of how the game is played at the moment, and
he actually presents it in a fairly like relaxed way. Like, it's not like King where he's just spouting off stuff and it's like, well, it's still a vibey sort of thing, but it's still fairly in tuned. A lot of the ex-players just don't bring enough. I think Matthew Richardson is funny. I like him. He's provided some of my favorite Channel 7 commentary moments.
I'm always going to love Richard. But that's also
I wouldn't quite say he's like... I wouldn't, like, in terms of do I listen to him for expert commentary? No, I don't. I listen to him because he's a nice dude.
Yeah. By the way, I ended up just going with Rewalt.
Yeah, I think Johnson's also a good balance of like insight and likability as well.
I prefer seeing Johnson King, for example, or when they do like on the desk stuff of like between the quarters and stuff,
Yeah,
rather than during the
yeah,
game.
exactly.
Like,
No, I agree with that.
especially like Eddie Betts as well, Jordan Lewis as well. I prefer to see them like doing on the desk between quarter analysis rather
Mm.
than like live commentary.
Yeah. Also, I don't mind Antonio, but I just don't like his voice.
No,
I'm
that's valid.
sorry.
I have no issues. I have no arguments against that. But yeah, that is everything for this
Yeah.
week. It's been a long one, but I think we really
Mm.
enjoyed going a little bit deeper into some other stuff that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, not so
Especially
much
into
the
the
games,
round,
but just in
especially
general
into the round
things with the
ahead
surveys.
with
Yeah.
with 9 games coming back. So
Mm.
certainly some interesting games to look forward to. Um, so yeah, I think we're gonna wind things down here. Thank you so much
Mhm.
for coming and hang out with us this week. Be sure to go check out the socials, my socials as well. Again, I'm live on my Twitch channel every Tuesday night, 6:30 ish. Sometimes I'll do a second stream later in the week. I actually am planning on hopefully doing a second stream later in the week besides tomorrow night, because I have some new games on the PlayStation 5 that I really want to play and I really want to stream. So I'm looking forward to that. One of them might be a classic game that I grew up with that has finally come to PS5 that I'm looking forward to.
I don't want
Um,
to know.
I might mention to it later. Anyway, thank you all so much. Be sure to tune in to episode 19 next week here on YouTube and on Spotify. And we will see you all then. Goodbye.